Councilmember Zabriskie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Romack.
Here.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Here.
Mayor Klovstad.
Here. And just as a reminder, since we are still doing this all virtually, we will just continue in that order tonight. Although it was really nice to see a few of you up here today during Good Morning Truckee. Congratulations on actually being able to sit up here. Hopefully we'll get you here soon. All right, tonight we have a lovely Pledge of Allegiance from some of our female leadership at the town of Truckee in honor of International Women's Month. So please join me and them in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my gosh, I look so lonely up here. I see the whole group. Oh goodness. Okay, we're going to go to public comment. And this is specifically for members of the public to address the council on any items that are not on the agenda. And do we have any public comments for 4.0? Nope, they are all specific to agenda items. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, so we're going to go on to presentations. And the first one is, and she's already up and ready, Braun Roberts, our administrative analyst, public information officer, and Drew Jack are going to talk about our geographic information system, information technology, and presented the request for Truckee portal, right?
Thank you, Mayor Klovstad. So I just want to start by saying that we're super excited to present Request Truckee to you. This, in full disclosure, is totally Drew's project. He has done all the hard work on this. I just really wanted to jump in and help to highlight why it's such an important communications tool and how we can use it as an additional way to engage with our community and create further transparency and allow all our services to be more efficient and effective. So I'll go on mute so that we can play our little video for you to kind of show you exactly what it's about.
The town of Truckee has partnered with C-Click-Fix to create a new service request platform called Request Truckee. You can access Request Truckee by downloading the C-Click-Fix app through the Town of Truckee mobile interface or our desktop website. It is built to be easy to use for anyone on the go. When you see an issue, take less than a minute to report it. Snap a photo or video to make it even easier for our staff to locate. Open the app or web browser and start a new report. Add the image or video that you took and allow the app to use geolocation to capture your exact location. If you are inputting this when you get home or don't want to use your location from your phone, you can manually enter the location using the map tool. You will be able to choose from request types that are available. Finish up by including a brief description of where it is, what it looks like, and any other important information to help us get it resolved. Submit it and you are ready to go. One of our staff members will receive the request and you will be notified that it is received. Depending on the type of request, it will be sent to a particular department who is best suited to assist with the issue. A staff member will go through your request, identify where it is, and organize for it to be fixed. It is important to keep in mind that our hardworking staff receive many service requests on top of their day-to-day duties, which include snow removal, road maintenance, and even landscaping. And a request may not be complete straight away if there are other competing priorities or other time-sensitive requests. Nonetheless, Once the job is complete, our staff will update your request by reporting back the results and closing the request. You will be notified, including an email if you have shared your email address in the report. There are many different issues that can be reported through Request Truckee, including but not limited to trash, large item removal, graffiti, sign damage, road hazards, and many more. Our staff will get the job done. You can use the app to see what other service requests have been submitted in and around town. If an issue is reported that is either out of town limits or the responsibility of another special district, we will let you know through the app and also notify the responsible party of the issue. If you are interested in learning more about Request Truckee, download the See-Click-Fix app and explore the functions, or you can visit www.townoftruckee.com/I want to submit a request. There you can also access staff-provided tutorials and details on the types of requests that can be entered. We hope that Request Truckee is an easy tool that connects our community with our staff.
Awesome. Okay, am I sharing my screen properly? I might not be.
We can see you.
Judy, how do I do it?
Not yet. There's, you should have a selection box within the Zoom meeting that says share your screen. There you go.
Perfect. Okay. So, basically, that video should really give you an idea of exactly what it's about and why we think it would be a valuable tool. It's logged publicly, so it creates further transparency and can match multiple requests that prevents duplication as well, and all these different requests coming in for one specific item. It's two-way communication, so it's interactive with a real staff member, and it's an accountable settings. That way it's public, so people can see that this request is there. They can see what we've written. They can see why it's there, which really creates real connection and empowerment for our community to feel like they can understand what kind of issues are going on around them in their neighborhood and, things that are important to them. If there's a lot of trash around over, the summer, it's gonna be up there. So it's cool for them to see that. There's easy access from the palm of your hand. So you can access this, as we said, through the app, through the mobile website, or through the desktop. We also have the capability to link it with our social media as well, but we just really wanted to iron out all the kinks before we added that extra layer. It replaced YourGov, which is what we had previously. It wasn't widely used. It was just a little icon on our website. Whereas this, we can kind of put on different divisions pages as well. So if they're on, the police department website and they, want to put something about graffiti, we can have it on there as well as somewhere else. So if they're on Keep Truckee Green, we can put it on there and they can report some litter issues. So it's really cool that we can put it in lots of different places and make it as accessible as possible for people. It's also a centralized issue management system, so that way it tracks it all in one area. Previously, people weren't using YourGov, and they instead were just sending emails, which can get lost and aren't necessarily great to track. And if we can see then that we're having ongoing issues for something, then that can help us with budget decisions and other priorities later on. So as we mentioned, Drew put together a few tutorials to support our community with the transition of the new platform. So submitting a request or navigating the portal. It is fairly easy to use, but it is so great to have, the step-by-step platform to help you. So one of the really cool things in the way that Drew set it up is if you download the actual See-Click-Fix app, you'll see on the side here, it has emergency alerts, short-term rental related issues. So that's host compliance, Where's My Snowplow, so Truckee 511, the calendar, so that way people can access what events are going on for the town, including the agendas for these meetings. The town parking app, so we're the Way to Go app, as well as then our social media. And this is all stuff that, none of this is fixed in stone. It's kind of what we thought would be the information that people would want. And, we can change it and as we adapt and see how it's used, if we see there's something else that's more beneficial to be on the front of this app and a great way for people to access more information, it's interchangeable. One other thing I really wanted to point out is See-Click Fix is used in many different places all over the country, and it can really help us with future disaster preparedness and response planning. Because Truckee has, the potential for natural disasters with winter and fire, it's just such a great tool to kind of help us if something happens. If people are used to using this and they, get really used to putting in their service requests through this, then it's going to be their place that they go. When people are in distress, that they go to what they know. So one of the examples that I really liked was See-Click Fix was used to report over 800 issues in just 24 hours in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. This includes power outages, flooding, down trees, down electrical lines, and other storm damage. So it can be used so well if we get it out there now and get people used to it and get people familiar with it. So one other thing I just wanted to mention is it's not monitored 24 hours a day. So emergency responses still need to go through 911 or our non-emergency police line, depending on what the issue is. And if we can promote it widely and educate our community on how to use it, it'll be a useful tool and meaningful resource to better our services and create community collaboration. So that's all I have. I don't know if Drew wants to step in and say anything else.
No, I won't. I won't go on anymore about that. But thanks, Braun. That was a great video, and thanks for really helping and promoting it and communicating. Also, thanks to Public Works because they're doing all the work behind it, and Sarah Cunnan especially, who helped with the setup. So, yeah, it was great. I hope we get more users, more people using it than the old platform, and I hope it's useful to the public. So, yeah, I'm excited about it. Thank you.
And it's definitely a work in progress. So please bear with us as we do kind of iron out any issues that we may have. Our staff are, working really hard. Sarah's done a great job over there, as well as all the street maintenance crew, Riley, Brett, they're on it. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Braun. Do council have any questions about this? Councilmember Zabriskie?
Really like seeing the repairs go at super fast speed like that. I thought that was a nice touch. No questions.
Vice Mayor Henderson?
No questions. Thank you so much, Drew and Braun, for your work on it. And I think what's also really great about it is just that community feedback, sort of that follow through with our constituents when they report issues. So thanks for building that in.
And Councilmember Romack?
No questions, but this is fantastic. Definitely will help publicize it so more people can download it and utilize it and make our town even better. So thank you.
Agreed. And I saw you shaking your head, Paul V, or did you want to say something?
I was going to say the same as Lindsay. Braun, if you send us that in your monthly or weekly social media stuff, we can all put it out on our channels too. So good job. Thanks, guys.
Yes, let's definitely try to amplify this as much as we can. I especially like that it has so many extra options that you can click on, like Where's My Snowplow and the town news and updates. Is there an opportunity to have this offered in Spanish?
Great question. I can't see why we couldn't get it, but I'm not positive at the moment.
This is a great first step, but maybe as we've finalized our inner workings of it and get more comfortable with it, perhaps that's something that we can look into. And the only other thing that I'd love to see added is where's my bus, to link it into our transit system.
Yeah, that's great feedback, definitely.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Then we're going to go to 5.2, which is Town Manager Report. Jen, are you ready?
I am. Thank you. Good evening, Council and staff and community. Thank you, Braun and Drew and Sarah and Dev and all of Public Works. It's a great program and something to offer to our community, and they can track where their services are and the requests are. So awesome job. Just a couple quick reminders. We have a few webinars, workshops this week that the community may be interested in and council may be interested in participating in. They're both on Thursday. We have an ADU webinar from 12 to 1 on Thursday. If you're interested in learning more about our ADU program, you can register for that on the town website. There should be a link right on our front page. Also, our second workshop for Innovate Gateway, that is from 5:30 to 7:30, and you can find information for that on our website as well. As far as COVID, couple quick updates on that. There's not a lot to share at this point. We are still in the purple tier. Several counties have moved into the red tier, but Nevada County is still in the purple, just to remind everybody. You can register for vaccination information and updates at myturn.ca.gov. We're moving closer to that being activated in our county. So if you register now, you'll be all set for when that goes live. And then if you're interested in getting more information on vaccines or being on a standby list, you can go to the Tahoe Forest Hospital website and see if you're eligible to be on a standby list and sign up for that if you are. So I encourage any members of the community that are interested in that to go to the Tahoe Forest Hospital website for more information.
Thank you, Jen. I'll just add the note that on Thursday, it's going to be 1 year since the World Health Organization declared this a pandemic. I don't think any of us could have imagined we'd still be in the position that we're in right now, a year later. We are so close, though. And I just want to have a personal plea to everybody to get on My Turn, get registered, and get your vaccine as quickly as possible. It is, of course, the best and most secure way for us to reopen again, which we're all very anxious to do. And I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to happen. It's going to be soon. Just not next week, like I was really wishing it would be. Okay, and Lynn, do we have any public comment on presentations?
No.
Great. All right, we're going to move on to consent calendar. We have item 6.1, the minutes from February 23rd meeting. 6.2 is Police Department position authorization. 6.3 is a budget amendment for the Town Manager Division. 6.4, resolution approving Proposition 68 per capita and recreational infrastructure revenue enhancement grant applications for West River Site Development, C 1817, and resolution finding the project consistent with the purpose of Measure R trail funding. And then last but not least, our Public Service Center garage, C 1609, notice of completion. Do any council members wish to pull any of these agenda items?
No, but I did want to make a quick comment at some point, if you wouldn't mind.
Please go right ahead.
I just wanted to kind of call out the Public Service Center garages. That was a really big project that I believe Mayor Klofstad, you and I, was probably one of our first big meetings where we were being asked for a pretty considerable budget allocation. And during the employee, what was that called on Friday? The employee appreciation lunch on Friday. I was super thankful. Went and found Riley and got an amazing tour of a bunch of garages. That is what they are. If the rest of council has not been over there yet, reach out to Dan Wilkins and he can set you up with a great tour. But really, just amazing to see how much equipment we can fit in there, and from the condition that it was in prior to these garages to how it is now, it's just it's like night and day. And I think we're doing our community actually a big service in the long run of better maintaining a lot of this equipment that we spend so much money on to help maintain our community. So just wanted to say thank you to the Public Works Department and the Budget Department and everybody who Finance Department, everybody who had a hand in sort of getting this project moving and in front of us. It's a great win, and I was really proud to be able to go and take a tour. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Pallavi. I completely echo your sentiment. It's a great thing for our community to protect all of this equipment and to give those town employees the opportunity to do their work safely and not in the middle of a snowstorm, which we were seeing before. And that was a very big decision on one of our first council nights. I do recall that. Does any staff want to pull any agenda items?
Not to pull any items, I would just piggyback off of Councilmember Pallavi's statements and let the community and the rest of the council know that our hope is to have a grand opening in October in collaboration with Big Truck Day. We should hopefully be having gatherings by that point, and we can welcome the community to tour the facility as well as say thank you for supporting it.
We all look forward to that. Okay, with that, do I have a motion for consent account? Oh, do we have any public comment for consent? No. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move the consent calendar. Sorry, Courtney.
I'll second it.
Call on us, Mayor. Call on us, please. We beg you. Just tell us.
Okay, Lynn, that is a motion by Councilmember Pallavi and seconded by Vice Mayor Henderson. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Zabriskie. Oh.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Romack.
Yes.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Aye.
Mayor Klostad.
Aye. Okay, and so it passes. Thank you. We're going to move right into item 7.1, which is the discussion around Southwest Gas franchise agreement extension. Jen, are you going to be kicking this one off?
Yes, I'm happy to kick off. I know Andy is available as well. And Stacy Woodward should be joining us tonight. She's from Southwest Gas to answer any questions for the council. I see Stacy just logged on. I'll be very brief. The council heard this originally at the end of last year. We brought this forward as a 12 to 18 month extension while Southwest Gas worked with their consultant to analyze different options that they could bring forward. At that time, the council asked us to return, get more information from Southwest Gas on exactly what they plan to bring forward at the end of November in terms of footprint reductions. Southwest Gas provided us with a letter that was included as an attachment to your staff report in terms of what their commitment is and what they've been working on in the interim. So staff is asking council for direction to negotiate a short-term 12-month extension. The terms would be pretty consistent with what's in the existing contract until we see the results of their consultant work, and then can negotiate a longer-term contract under the council's direction with specific items included. So with that, we're open to questions. Staff is, or Stacy as well.
Thank you very much. So there is no presentation on this. It is just up to start asking questions.
Just start asking questions, please.
Okay. Well, Councilmember Zabriskie, you are first in line.
Thank you. I just have questions for Stacy. Stacy, you are online?
I am here, yes.
Thank you. It's good to see you, and thank you for the January 28th letter. And that's what I'm going to work off of, the letter you sent, because I have questions on the bulleted items. And just before the bulleted items, in terms of providing the town with updates, progress, if you will, in terms of meeting local and state goals for greenhouse gas targets, reduction targets, how often would you be providing progress reports? Once a year? Once every 2 years?
Mayor Klofstad and Councilman Zabriskie, Stacy Woodbury with Southwest Gas for the record. I think that's something we can include in our discussions once the report comes out. I would, off the cuff, answering the question, I would say every 6 months maybe would be appropriate, but we can certainly, once we come out with the initial report findings from Guidehouse, we can talk about how often you might look to see updates from the company.
But anyway, you would have data available, at least internally, reflecting what your customer consumption is within the town of Truckee.
Yes, we do collect that annually, though the franchise fees are driven off of gross receipts. I can share some consumption data with you right now. The most current data I have was something I had pulled together when we were in the climate subcommittee meetings. But so that at the end of, and sorry, this is tiny print, so here go the readers. Throughout I have a 10-year snapshot from 2008 to 2018. For most of that period up through 2016, the annual therm consumption in Truckee was between 8.5 and 9.5 million. In 2017, the therm consumption was 11 million. And in 2018, it was 10.5 million. And I believe the figure for 2019 that I heard talked about internally at one point when we were at a climate change meeting was about 12 million therms at this,
and you're able to break it down to your tariff categories, right? You can do commercial and residential.
Yes.
Industrial.
So for calendar year 2018, 50% was primary residential. 2% was those customers that were in the care program. So they were low income customers that were getting the 20% discount. 23% was secondary residential. 21% was small commercial, and 4% was large commercial.
So you would be able to provide that, at least you have that data available internally at least once a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then in terms of decarbonizing the natural gas supply, are the current projections of what's possible around 15% of total natural gas supply?
So I was reading something from the American Gas Association the other day. They had put together a study where they had identified all of the potential sources of methane recapture in the United States. And it was an astounding number. It was something upwards of 50% just on methane recapture, I think. But I could look back for that article and get you a more specific figure.
That'd be great if you could just send just a citation for the article, if not the article itself. In terms of working with the town and regional partners to look for, I guess, local supplies. So Southwest Gas is thinking in terms of supplies where their existing pipelines go. Is that correct?
Yes, I would believe so, yes.
Is Southwest Gas going to look at forest products, forest biomass as a potential source for renewable gas, or is that out of the question right now.
I believe that's one of the options that is being looked at, yes. In particular to Truckee, there is the sewage waste stream, there is the landfill, there's forest bio-waste, and there's a food waste stream. So those would be the logical areas to be looking at in Truckee.
Without getting ahead of what you're going to provide us in November, are you familiar enough with local conditions to know about efforts in Loyalton to renew a biomass facility there?
Yeah, I understand that it's been difficult to pencil out. I think North Star was looking at that, and also at Loyalton, and that's one of the tricky things with the biomass, unless there was some sort of state or federal incentive that could be used to help get those projects off the ground.
When you say you would work with upstream suppliers, does that mean going outside of your own sources of natural gas?
So Southwest Gas is a gas transportation company, meaning we're not in the process of extracting natural gas. So our upstream suppliers are those where we are getting our natural gas supply from. So a lot of that is coming out of the Rocky Mountains or Utah at this point in time.
Not coming out of Texas? I thought Southwest Gas used to come out of Texas.
Southwest Gas in Tucson, Arizona, comes out of Texas, but our supply up here comes from farther north.
And when you were talking about carbon offsets, what did you have in mind when you wrote that? So
a lot of larger companies that, for instance, airlines, are pledging to get to carbon neutrality by 2050, and you can do things like plant trees or things that help offset your emissions. And so the thought is that for whatever we can do with renewables, and if we can't get there entirely with renewables, we can get the rest of the way with carbon offsets.
I was curious about the rebates. I went on Southwest Gas website to look at the rebates that are already being offered in California. And I got a website page that showed rebates for California, Nevada, maybe the other one was Arizona. The problem I had was there weren't any rebates for California on the website. I think there were 4 for Nevada, but none for California appliances. Do you know what rebates?
I don't think that's correct. We have pages for each of the 3 states because that we operate in, because the regulatory authority in that state has to approve what the rebates are. And we do have a substantial number of rebates in California, and I can get you that information. For 21 to 25, I think there's a few different things than there are presently being offered, but the current rate case, the CPUC has extended that, so the approval won't be until April 20th is their new deadline. So we're operating under the old ones, and I want to apologize in advance because in this letter, at one point somebody gave me this rate case number, and one of you was looking for it, and that was not in fact the rate case number. And I've had that in like 4 or 5 communications, and I apologize. The one that I sent to Jen yesterday is the correct rate case number, and if you search that one, you will find the rate case. But I can send you information on the California rebates that are currently being offered. And then the attachment that Jen sent last night are the ones that are proposed in the new rate case.
I think Councilmember Zabriskie might be frozen.
I was like, he's not moving.
I think you're right. Okay, while we wait. Oh, there he is again. Jan, you were frozen for a bit. Oh, and now he's gone entirely. And back again. Councilmember Zabriskie? Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm almost done. I lost the connection.
I think you're a bit unstable there. Why don't we go to Vice Mayor Henderson and give Councilmember Zabriskie a bit to get back to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Stacy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. And Councilmember Zabriskie asked several questions that I had. I guess one related to the carbon offset. Does Southwest Gas currently offer its customers any type of carbon offset for a small fee? I don't think you do, but I just want to make sure I'm right. No. Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. And in terms of working regionally, are you working with other nearby towns to meet some of the same types of goals?
Yes. So what we're looking at, we're working with the city of South Lake Tahoe, of course, and we've given them the same deadline of. We've given ourselves the same deadline of giving them that information by November 1 of 2021. What we're actually doing as a company through the Guidehouse Project is looking at how we can, as an entire company, try to aim towards carbon neutrality by 2021 by using new technologies and decarbonizing the pipeline.
Sure, absolutely.
And so right now we're looking at it for all of the communities that we serve in all of the states that we serve.
Great, thank you. Related to solutions and different technologies, obviously we're likely going to need short-term and long-term solutions. And so I guess this might be more of a comment than a question, but I would encourage you all, when you come back in November, I would really love to understand the timeframes and types of solutions that are being mapped to those timeframes. I don't know what your deliverables look like with Guidehouse, but I'm assuming that's something you guys have already scoped with them. And so really, understanding what that looks like and, what are kind of the quick hit things that can happen and what are things that really take those longer term investments. That would be helpful.
Yes, and I did send a link from your discussions at the December meeting to the Guidehouse team so that they could hear for themselves the types of concerns that you have. And I think that they're going to be able to deliver on and answer those concerns.
Great, thank you. I think those are some of my main questions for right now. So I'll turn it over to our next council members.
Okay, Councilmember Romack, you're up.
Thank you. Kind of just branching off what Courtney was just asking about short-term, long-term timeframes. I believe in your letter, it spoke to, maybe some of the ways you can take action now versus other under existing regulatory authority versus what will require approval from the California Public Utilities Commission. So you'll clearly outline all of that so we understand this could be done ASAP. This might take a while, hearing from the CPUC, correct?
Correct. For instance, I think with renewable natural gas, we're looking at the way our tariff is structured, but there may be a way to get that sooner rather than later, depending on the supply, under the existing billing mechanism, or with a letter of guidance, which is something you can get in 3 to 6 months versus something that's a newer technology that has to get regulatory approval before we can do it. It just depends on what the solution is and how it fits into our current approval for operations by the CPUC.
Thank you. And then this question, Andy, is for you, just clarifying. So, you are asking us council members to recommend to staff or to that it would be a 12-month contract. So that would go till May of 2022.
Yes, that's correct? The idea. That's the idea. Yes.
So that would give us from November to May to hash out more things, really understand what gas is bringing back to us before we would go to the next agreement.
That's right.
Correct.
And that's right. It is possible to proceed with Southwest Gas under an expired franchise agreement, simply keeping the terms of the current one in place, even though it would have expired. But it's a little bit cleaner if we don't do that. It's cleaner if we have something in place, just to clarify exactly what the authority is, what our authority is, what their authority is, while we wait to get the results of their investigation and while we try to work out the terms of a new agreement. So this is really just intended to be buying us some time until that information is available and until we can have those discussions with Southwest Gas.
Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Okay, Councilmember Zabriskie, would you like to finish your questions?
Well, I think that was a message for me to limit my questions. So I only have one left. Stacy, would it be fine for the town to contact Southwest Gas between now and when it prepares the letter to discuss more about what might go into the letter?
So what we're going to bring to you is not going to be a letter. It's going to be, my understanding is, a report of what the options are and what the analysis is. So if it has a letter, it's probably going to be a cover letter, if that makes sense. But the work that Guidehouse does for us, as I provided, is proprietary. And until the conclusion and they issue the report to us, we're not allowed to disclose anything. But I'm certainly happy to give the council's status updates if you want, and let you know that we're on target to reaching that November 1 date, and that we'll be able to bring you the information then.
Great. Thank you very much for appearing.
Okay, Councilmember Pallavi, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thanks, Mayor Klofstad.
Okay, I have a few. Hello, Stacy. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
So the big question is, what do you see Southwest Gas' role is in helping California achieve the Senate Bill 32 targets?
So Southwest Gas as a company, and as it relates to Truckee, is looking towards ourselves as a company, looking towards carbon neutrality, which will in turn help the town of Truckee, the city of South Lake Tahoe, and all of our customers in 3 states go in that area. So we see ourselves as a community partner that can come in and bring you solutions. The more greenhouse gas emissions that we can help you reduce in the town helps you get further towards your goals. And as the reductions are seen from greenhouse gas emissions associated with use with natural gas, then you can focus on other areas that are hopefully greater in emissions than natural gas at this point.
Okay, so that, I think you've actually answered my second question there too, which was, what do you see Southwest Gas' role in helping Truckee achieve their 100% renewable goals? So you've been aware of Senate Bill 32 since its adoption, I'm assuming, in 2006, correct?
I've only been with the company for 5 years, so I can't speak to that. But I will tell you that I moved into, when I started with the company, I was in community relations, and I moved into the government relations arena in 2018. But I did not become aware of Truckee's specific goals until 2019. Which was when Southwest Gas came to the city and asked if we could participate in the climate change subcommittee process.
Excellent. That actually leads me into my next line of questioning. Do you remember when the first meeting that you came to for the general plan update?
I believe it was in August of 2019.
That was the first time you presented. So I'm pretty sure you were at one or two of the meetings before that. The first one was May 15th, and perhaps you started at the July one or something like that. But in the August one, you did do a presentation which was incredibly helpful and encouraging, because it showed that Southwest Gas was actually thinking about the fact that there are these targets out there, both by the state and by the town, to achieve 100% renewable and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in incremental steps along the way. And you did a very nice presentation that showed all the ways that that was possible for Southwest Gas to achieve. And I appreciated it then, and I still appreciate it now. What I'm struggling with is that was a year and a half ago. And my question here is, when you made that presentation in August of 2019, what did you start working on then that we might be able to have more information about now?
So I believe one of the things that we had talked to you about was renewable natural gas. There is a group of dairy farms in Lyon and Churchill County, which is immediately to the east of Carson City. Those dairy farms have been working to install anaerobic digestive systems. They are nearing. Yeah, it is. They are nearing the completion of that project. They have acquired ground and are going through permitting to install a injection station into the Southwest Gas pipeline just east of Silver Springs in Nevada, and we'll be trucking the renewable natural gas down to that site to put it in our system. I understand that is within less of a year of all that coming to fruition. I think there's been some, they got the land acquired, but the permitting process, depending on the permitting agency or multiple permitting agencies, can take some time. One of the other, I talked, as I referenced in the comments to Councilman Zabriskie, the local sources, and I think we also talked about trying to partner with TDPUD, trying to get all the acronyms straight in my head. And we had been trying to meet with the CEO of TDPUD to talk about how we might partner with them. That had fallen by the wayside with the departure of REM, but I had just gotten an email from Stephen Ponsley this evening, and we're going to be looking to set up a meeting to talk with TDPD about how we can potentially partner with them. We talked about hydrogen technology. Southwest Gas has entered into filed with regulatory approval with SoCal Gas and I think PG&E to have regulatory approval to get a hydrogen injection standard for the state of California into our regulatory authority. Renewable natural gas, let me back step for a minute, is a carbon neutral resource. So as you blend it into the gas supply as a carbon neutral resource, it takes the carbon emissions of carbon dioxide down. And the more you blend in, and how much can that be? That's one of the things that we're looking at right now. As to hydrogen and the tariff approval, or I'm sorry, I'm not the regulatory policy one, but we've submitted for the approval for the hydrogen injection standard in California. Hydrogen is another carbon neutral resource, and that resource can also be blended in. I believe the last I heard was up to 10%, but it also takes the carbon emissions down when you blend it into the gas supply. Concurrently with the approval that we are seeking from the CPUC, we have partnered with Arizona State University in our Arizona service territory. We are going to, in Arizona, on one of our company properties, we are setting up a system that consists of the same pipe that we use. So we're going to set up a mock pipe distribution system using the same materials that we have installed in Truckee and in all of our other service territories. And we're going to set up a distribution system and basically a house with gas appliances. And we're going to test the hydrogen blending through the pipe system to make sure that it holds up under our existing polyethylene pipe and that it can go and be compatible with the appliances. We just entered into that agreement I believe at the beginning of this year, and we'll be conducting that pilot project with Arizona State University so that we can move forward with hydrogen blending at the appropriate time. And one of the third, I think, potential solution I offered as something we're exploring is power to gas. That's where natural gas can partner with renewable energy for when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. And the idea is that when the sun goes down, you can, in the peak hours of the day, when they're over generating power, hopefully, because the sun's really shiny, we can capture the excess energy that they don't have the battery storage for to use later. You put that through an electrolysis process, and you can split off the hydrogen from the oxygen, and you can then take the hydrogen and store it and use it to blend it into the natural gas system. There are a number of existing solar facilities in northern Nevada that the company has been reaching out to see what their status is as regards to how much excess electricity that they have available, and if they would be interested in this and looking at if it's feasible to have the power to gas electrolysis. Sorry, too many olysis in my talk here, but if they would have excess capacity and if it would be feasible to explore those projects with them. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And then the Guidehouse stuff is running on a concurrent track.
So you're doing internal research as well as working with Guidehouse, essentially,
Yes.
is what that comes down to. And when did you hire Guidehouse to begin this research?
Last fall.
Last fall. So in 2020, last fall.
Yes, 2020 last fall.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Henderson, I saw you feverishly taking notes. Did you have additional questions, or are you good?
I guess I have one additional question, and it sort of follows up on something that Councilmember Zabriskie mentioned. So, Stacey, you responded that you'd be willing to provide some sort of just interim updates before November. Of course, you can't share anything proprietary. I understand and respect that. But I'm confident you probably have an interim deliverable schedule set up with Guidehouse, and I wonder if you can share any of what that is to include. I would imagine it would be things like, market and landscape analysis, new technology assessment, feasibility and cost effectiveness assessment for some of these new solutions. And I'm just curious if you could provide any insight into that, and if we could use that as the basis for some of those interim updates.
Unfortunately, I am not able to provide that information. That project team is at a very high level in our company, and it's not at my level. So I don't have access to that. I did meet with the Guidehouse team to share the processes that Truckee has been through as far as the climate change process and the different concerns I had heard from the council members. And as I said, I had shared with them the link so that they could hear your comments in person. But I can check and see and bring you a status update of yes, we're on track, and yes, we're going to be able to deliver on November, but I'm not privy to that information myself.
Okay. Thank you, Stacey. I appreciate that. I definitely understand. I think, Mayor Klofstad, what I think I'm hearing and sensing a little bit is just potentially some nervousness on our part of we want to make sure that in 8 months, the solutions that come forward, that we have solutions that are coming forward, I guess, in 8 months. We don't want to lose time, I think, is at least how I'm feeling.
I think that is the crux of the discussion here. So let's take a pause with our questioning, because I know we do have some public comment. So let's go ahead and open that up. And I believe, yes, the phone number is on the screen if anybody wants to call in now as well. Thank you. Or you can text.
All right. I have some public comment, from voicemail, so I'll play that.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet Atkinson. I'm calling to comment on item 7.1. I understand that the town of Truckee has passed a 100% renewable resolution in 2017, and I'm contacting you to voice my support again to the town of Truckee in regards to what might come up from Southwest Gas as it renegotiates its agreement. I am totally in favor of the town's renewable goals, and I believe that achieving 100% renewable electricity is in the cards. I'm very proud of the TDPUD for its 63% renewable energy, which is increasing all the time. We have to stand fast to our goals, and that is to use the lowest carbon emitting sources of energy. We have to do this for our children and our future generations, and to remain in this community in the years to come. Electrification is the way of the future, and I think our electrical services are where we have to put our focus on continuing to make them reliable. Gas is on its way out. Fossil fuels are on their way out. And if you just look at what happened in Texas, gas is not.
I did not catch that name, but thank you, whoever that was.
We've also got a couple of down and the meeting is no longer being broadcast from a couple of different phone numbers.
Yes, I'm seeing that too.
No, television's on.
Or streaming.
Television's on.
So do we need to?
It's television or streaming.
Yes.
I see it's still active on our website. Local problem.
Oh, it's back up now, is the message I just got.
Okay. We will keep going then. Do we want to replay that last one then, just to make sure?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
To be replaced with clean energy. I also believe Southwest Gas should have more robust energy conservation programs and customer rebates for conservation measures. Thank you.
We got another down again message.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that it stopped before the first message was read. So we might need to go back to those first two.
Okay.
Is it back? Okay. All right. So I think we had a Janet Atkinson and Amanda Blake.
Yep.
So we'll replay those two. We got Jennifer Roberts. Sorry, everybody.
Hi, my name is Janet Atkinson. I'm calling to comment on item 7.1. I understand that the town of Truckee has passed a 100% renewable resolution in 2017, and I'm contacting you to voice my support again to the town of Truckee in regards to what might come up from Southwest Gas as it renegotiates its agreement. I am totally in favor of the town's renewable goals, and I believe that achieving 100% renewable electricity is in the cards. I'm very proud of the TDPUD for its 63% renewable energy, which is increasing all the time. We have to stand fast to our goals, and that is to use the lowest carbon emitting sources of energy. We have to do this for our children and our future generations, and to remain in this community in the years to come. Electrification is the way of the future, and I think our electrical services are where we have to put our focus on continuing to make them reliable. Gas is on its way out. Fossil fuels are on their way out. And if you just look at what happened in Texas, gas is not more reliable than electricity. So I urge you to continue to support our community's goal of reaching 100% carbon-free energy by 2050, and we'll have to keep on the road to achieving that by making sure that we stay on track with our clean energy. and using large quantities of natural gas is a polluting energy source, and I do not believe that Southwest Gas is going to steer us in the right direction. So thank you for continuing to look at our 100% renewable energy resolution in terms of any new gas resolutions that might come before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Janet.
Hi, my name is Amanda Blake, and I'm commenting on item 7.1. And I wanted to express my support for the 100% renewable goals that the town adopted in 2017. And I really want to see us achieve those goals. I think moving to renewable electricity, renewable energy, and electrical use is really critical for our future of our town as well as future generations. And I really urge the town council to do everything in its power to keep us moving in the direction of those renewable energy goals. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Amanda.
And we believe Jennifer Roberts played.
Was heard.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, I'm John Sorensen. I live at 13759 Donner Pass Road in Truckee. I'm speaking about agenda item 7.1. I strongly support the Town of Truckee resolution, 80% greenhouse gas reduction by 2040 and 100% renewable energy by 2050. And it's because I'm concerned about Truckee's future. I want to leave the Truckee's pristine condition for my 5 grandchildren who will succeed me. I believe the best way to reduce our house's carbon footprint is to go all electric. In your deliberations about natural gas, let's not lock ourselves in to years of being tied to using it. We can go all electric, and let's try to do that as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
This is Nancy Hyam, Higham, calling about agenda item 7.1, and to weigh in on the efforts of Southwest Gas and the phony push to have people believe that gas is more reliable than electricity. What gives you the right to bully communities into accepting your version of the facts to keep you in clover along with your executives? Truckee citizens support the 100% renewable goals to be effectively achieved by 2030. What are your grandchildren going to think about your effort to sabotage the will of the people in our community? We need you to support the lowest carbon emitting source of an energy, and you need to get out of our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
My name is Anita Walls-Tuttle. I'm calling in regard to agenda item 7.1, 100% renewable resolution. I want to congratulate Truckee for being a leader in this by setting up such things as 100% renewable electricity by 2030, 80% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2040, and 100% renewable electric by 2050. You are setting reducing carbon footprint now and for the future. The lowest carbon emitting source of energy is that electricity from TDPUD. Right now you stand at 60% now of the renewables, and you're increasing. It's the lofty but doable goals that you set for yourself. But I say go for it, Truckee. Be a leader and get to your points when you need to. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anita.
Hi, my name's Erin Delafontaine, and I'm a Truckee resident commenting on agenda item 7.1. We all know that staying within 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming requires rapid and systematic change. Our Truckee citizens, including myself, overwhelmingly support the 100% renewable resolution that was adopted by the town of Truckee in 2017, including 100% renewable electricity by 2030, an 80% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2040, and 100% renewable energy in all sectors by 2050. Reaching our community goal of 100% carbon-free energy by 2050 will not be achievable by continuing to use large quantities of natural gas. There is growing consensus that electrifying buildings and using electric appliances like heat pumps and induction stoves is a path to tackling this problem. Buildings last for decades. Avoiding gas infrastructure and appliances in new construction is of the utmost importance. The gas industry's pitch for fossil gas alternatives like biological or synthetic gas is not the solution, because their own study indicated after 2 decades the FGA production could only replace 13% of demand for natural gas, and that it would be costly. Southwest Gas has lobbied, as many other gas companies have, to fight municipal ordinances that support their city's renewable energy resolutions by encouraging legislation that would make it illegal for cities to limit new gas hookups. In fact, in February 2020, a senior member of the Arizona legislature, who'd received political contributions from Southwest Gas, introduced a bill that made it illegal for cities to limit new gas hookups. There must be a swift and just transition that tackles both sides of this equation, including reducing demand and therefore supply, and replacing with truly renewable energy sources. I urge Town Council to ask that Southwest Gas be a part of the solution and come to the table, not an impediment to renewable energy actions and goals. The solution must be good for our economy, community, and environment. To remain viable businesses, they must change their business model. Their skill sets in offshore construction for wind turbines and skills needed to operate and balance the electric power grid, for instance, can be utilized in that new business model. In addition, gas companies such as Southwest Gas should be providing incentives for energy conservation to our community. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Erin.
I'm calling for agenda item 7.1 and to protest Southwest Gas scare tactics that maintain that gas is more reliable than electricity. That could be marginally true, but we must sacrifice a little now to quickly bring down CO2 levels. Our electrical services are reliable. Southwest Gas is a deep-pocketed bully with dozens of lobbyists. We haven't millions to throw at lobbyists, so do our own, and hope you'll agree 100% renewable in 9 years is the right deal. Stripping local governments of the authority to pass laws to limit gas expansion in their communities is antagonistic to democracy, the very thing Southwest Gas executives would decry if their quest wasn't secure monthly payments and outrageous salaries. I doubt the good faith of the gas industry in reducing GHG emissions. In Arizona, Southwest Gas lobbied for a preemption law. You know, Truckee citizens support the 100% renewable goals, and TDPUD is well on its way to achieving 100% by 2030. Our family strongly supports Truckee's 100% because we want to leave a livable community for our children. The best way to reduce our carbon footprint is to use the lowest common emitting source of energy. That is electricity, from TDPUD at 63% renewable and increasing. Fault Southwest Gas for not having a more robust energy conservation program with customer rebates. Bob Hyam, thank you for keeping Truckee beautiful.
Thank you, Bob.
This is Deirdre Henderson. I'm commenting in connection with agenda item 7.1.
I'm a full-time resident of Truckee. I'm also the group leader of the Untitled Chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby and co-lead of 100% Renewable Truckee, which is the citizens coalition that brought the 100% renewable resolution to the town. Truckee citizens support the town's 100% renewable goals. The resolution enjoyed an unprecedented outpouring of community support, and it helped to spur the town to develop its climate action plan. We in Truckee are serious about leaving our children and future generations a livable community and world. We understand that the best way to reduce our carbon footprint now and into the future is to use the lowest carbon emitting source of energy, which in Truckee is and will continue to be electricity from our PUD, which has a formidable renewable portfolio that is increasing all the time in response to citizen input. I believe that the smart electrification will in the long run be the way we achieve our renewable goals. However, I'm interested in what Southwest Gas has to say about how it will help us to achieve our goals at an affordable price. And I also encourage it to make robust conservation and rebate programs a serious part of what it proposes. I'm sorry to say that I have concerns about Southwest Gas approaching this exercise in good faith. I say that because the gas industry has been attempting to beat back local government restrictions on new gas connections by lobbying state legislatures to strip localities of the authority to do so, thus preempting communities from choosing a clean energy future. Southwest Gas actively promoted such legislation in Arizona, which passed in 2020. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this important issue.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Hi, my name is Sam Ruderman, and I'm commenting on item 7.1 about the town's franchise agreement with Southwest Gas. Natural gas accounts for over 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions generated in Truckee, essentially tied with emissions from transportation. Including emissions from natural gas leakage, which occurs in distribution and supply lines, natural gas accounts for the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Truckee. To achieve the town's 100% renewable resolution and reduce emissions by 80% by 2040, an initiative that is overwhelmingly supported by residents, the community must reduce its consumption of natural gas, plain and simple. We know that alternatives such as electric air source heat pumps are not only viable, but are preferable alternatives to natural gas heaters. Over 60% of Truckee-Donner Public Utility District's electricity grid, which I'll note is highly reliable, is currently supplied by renewable sources. Further electrification will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions considerably, but based on cost comparison calculations by local energy experts, it will also save residents money. And it will improve public health by reducing the nitrogen oxides and particulates that are released through natural gas combustion, which result in significantly increased risk of asthma for children. More and more cities in California and across the nation are recognizing the importance of transitioning away from natural gas and electrifying. Many jurisdictions have outright banned natural gas infrastructure in new development, which, in addition to reducing environmental impact, is also resulting in cheaper home construction. But if this is not a measure that the town is willing to take at this time, then at a minimum, it must work with Southwest Gas to ensure that it can meaningfully increase the portion of renewable natural gas in its supply to the community. While this is only a transitional step and electrification should be the long-term goal, it is absolutely essential that Southwest Gas provides renewable natural gas to the community in the near term to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions in order to achieve the clear environmental objectives of residents and town council. Any other opportunities to collaborate with Southwest Gas that would achieve emissions reductions, such as offering rebates for retrofitting outdated and inefficient systems, are welcomed and should be supported. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sam.
Hi, my name is Tim Lowe. I'm a resident of Kings Beach for 10 years. I work at local ski resorts. I support Agenda 7.1 and the committee and the town of Truckee against Southwest Gas to get Southwest to present ways to be 100% clean. I think being 100% clean is extremely important. I think Southwest Gas is using scare tactics, and I think that we have to move forward and be 100% renewable for our future generation, for our kids, for the environment, for Lake Tahoe clarity, for everything. It's a moral decision, and the right one is to be green. And how do we get there? We need help from federal government, big government, gas companies, everyone. Everyone needs to contribute to this. Appreciate your time. I hope this gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Then we also have a couple of text message comments.
Okay.
Public comment 7.1. Let's all not forget about the brown and blackouts in California. Please keep the Southwest Gas flowing. We heat with gas and our fixed income, Matt Miller. Please add, where are we getting all this electricity from that you're talking about? Thank you, Matt Miller.
Thank you, Matt.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was a lot of great information, a lot of great details. I would just say thank you to everybody who took the time to provide public comment. The point of the discussion tonight is to validate and affirm our commitment to work together with Southwest Gas towards achieving those goals. And I personally, as long as Southwest Gas is at the table working with us, I will continue to work with them on this. But it has to be towards those goals because that is our commitment. So with that, I think we will open up deliberation. And Councilmember Zabriskie, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I don't have a lot to say. The public comments reflect a great deal of skepticism about Southwest Gas. I feel it's incumbent upon us as the council to insist upon objective, specific, quantitative plans from Southwest Gas on how it's going to achieve a substantial reduction combined with offsets to get us to carbon neutrality on the natural gas side of things. One of the commenters noted that the fossil fuels, the natural gas, accounts for about the same as transportation. It is about 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions. That is something that we have control over in the sense that we can establish building codes and land use regulations and that sort of thing that would directly affect future provision of natural gas. So Stacy, if you can just pass it on up the ladder, that the citizens of Truckee, and so naturally the council, are serious about reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from natural gas.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Vice Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the folks who called in tonight to make public comments. I think we have heard you loud and clear, and I know that these discussions have been going on for many years now about transitioning to 100% renewable energy. We don't have all the solutions across all applications right now, and so I'm certainly open to having a range of options as we work through technology and prices to our ratepayers and other factors. I think in the long term, it's clear we are moving to 100% renewable energy for this community, and we are committed to doing that. To fully decarbonize our grid, we need more renewables, what is probably a silly amount of batteries, and more electrification. And that can also make energy expensive. We need to be conscious that our solutions work for all of our customers, that they don't unduly increase energy burden for certain customer segments. That said, there are things that we can do right now to be reducing our footprint. Things like the renewable portfolio at the PUD. As many folks mentioned, they're making great progress on this. It is at about 63% renewable energy. And there's a new solar contract coming online in 2022, and that will push that needle significantly. We also need to continue making progress on electric transportation and at least partial, if not full, electric space heating. So I just want to say that I hope Southwest Gas has heard our community and brings back real solutions that are realistic, that will help us to make this transition to achieve our 100% renewable energy solution. Stacey, you being here tonight and just being here for the past several months, being at the table indicates to me that you are all committed to helping us make this transition. And I appreciate that. I respect you all for that. And I also don't envy you. It's hard work that you have ahead of you as well. There are a lot of limitations with other sources such as waste methane to cover natural gas consumption. Blending hydrogen with the existing gas supply has its limitations. You already alluded to, your pilot to test that to see the impacts on your infrastructure like pipes and appliances. So good luck. And I'm looking forward to what you bring back in November.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson and Councilmember Romack.
Thank you very much. And thanks, yes, to all the public who made comments. I look forward to many more conversations around getting to 100% renewable energy with my fellow council members, hearing from the community, because I think there's a lot of great ideas from the community and fellow council members that I'd love to hear more about. Tonight, we are talking specifically, about moving forward with this contract extension. So, Stacey, thank you for being here this evening. You heard loud and clear what our community is hoping for. So I think that gives you some idea of, what the council would like to see. As Councilmember Zabriskie said, definitely some specifics. Some long-term, short-term, as well as all, different types, just so we really have a suite of options to look at, I think is definitely something that I'm looking forward to seeing in November. So thank you again for being here and look forward to hearing more in the fall.
Thank you, Councilmember Romack. Councilmember Pallavi.
I don't have any additional comments. I think you guys have covered it, so thank you.
Yes, I think our fellow council members were very eloquent on this point. It is clear that our community is committed to our 100% renewable goals, and it is also clear that the prior council and this council has affirmed those as well. Also, as Stacey alluded to, this impacts other communities in our region. They're working with South Lake Tahoe on this as well. And all the same pipelines serve the community in between. So I think this is fair to say that is a very significant opportunity for us to change the greenhouse gas emissions of our region into the future if we can do this successfully and do it together. And I see Stacey shaking her head yes, so I really appreciate that. I do also want to recognize, as Councilmember Zabriskie said, there's definitely some hesitancy, and we heard a few community members express concern, and I would echo that in one specific realm. I am a little frustrated that the Southwest Gas has been working with us on this for almost 2 years now, and just a few months ago hired this consultant. I know you're doing your own research as well, but we are nervous Nellies up here. We've got, as you can see, a very committed community, and so we need to be reassured. I think that's going to be the bottom line of this discussion, Stacey, is we would like to see those progress updates. We would like to have some interface and know that we're going to be on time with this. We're extending this agreement, but we don't want to do it again. We're going to want to make sure that we meet that November deadline and give ourselves plenty of time to negotiate, because as Vice Mayor Henderson eloquently explained, this has a lot of ramifications on our community for pricing and other things that we want to be sensitive to. So we want a serious commitment to this report and working collaboratively towards these common goals. And I heard that Southwest Gas does recognize their role in achieving both our goals and the state's goals, and we will hold you to that, because none of us can get there without the other. And I recognize that. So I also want to recognize the fact that you have been at the table with us as far back as November of 2019. You actually sent me a list of quite a few things that you guys were working on, much of which is in this letter that you recently sent. The one new thing, though, is the Guidehouse consultant commitment, and I'm really glad to see that. I would have liked to have seen it sooner, is all I can say. And that's the hesitation that I think many of our community members are seeing. If we're going to get there, we've got to get there together, and we've got to get there on each other's timelines as well. So I'm very pleased to see that. I'm looking forward to these updates. I think we have, the only other thing that I will add is that I think a critical factor of what we propose going into this next agreement will need to include a much more robust rebate and efficiencies program, because the best way for us to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions is to not use that therm in the first place. And so I think that's going to be our biggest opportunity to achieve some of these interim goals until the technology catches up with us to facilitate the 100% renewable energy in the future. So that's my recap of it. It sounds like we have support from our council members. So is there any other comments or questions that any other council members would like to address before we go for a motion?
I just have one for Stacy, sort of advice, in the sense that it does appear to be a regional solution that is going to be best for Southwest Gas, allows them to scale up. When I heard Stacy mention the Churchill anaerobic digester, the first thought that crossed my mind is that should go to Reno rather than Truckee. So I think people in Truckee will be sensitive and smart enough to not want to cannibalize the use of renewable energy in a place where we can decrease greenhouse gas emissions even more. If we're going to find local sources, let's really get local sources. That's it.
Can I address that question or that concern?
Certainly.
Yeah. So the way the Southwest Gas Pipeline is the gas that serves Reno, that Southwest Gas delivers to Reno for NV Energy, comes down I-80. The pipeline that in which the renewable natural gas will be injected in is on Highway 50. That pipeline comes down Highway 50 and on the east side of Carson City, near the Eagle Valley Golf Course. If you've been down here, it splits off in two directions, and one goes up through Washoe Valley over the hill into Incline Village. That's the pipeline that serves Truckee. The split goes down through Carson Valley and up over Kingsbury Grade and serves South Lake Tahoe. So the gas that would be resulting from that project is headed your direction, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
It's great clarification. Thank you. With that, Councilmember Zabriskie, would you like to provide a motion for us?
Yes, I move that we approve staff's recommendation on item 7.1.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor Henderson, can I have a second?
I will second that.
And Lynn, roll call, please.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Romack.
Yes.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Yes.
Mayor Klostad.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Stacy. We look forward to your updates and achieving this together.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening.
Okay, and with that, do we want to take a quick break before we jump into the GPAC discussion item?
I think that makes sense. Maybe a 5-minute break.
Okay, so we'll see you back here at 6:40. Thank you, everybody. Okay. I'm bringing this meeting back to order. We are minus Council Member Zabriskie. I don't see him on here anyway. There he is. Fabulous. Okay. So item 7.2, our only other discussion item tonight, is General Plan Update Progress Report and General Plan Consultant Ascent Environmental Inc. Contract Amendment. And Danielle's going to start this one off for us.
Great, thanks, Mayor Klopstad. Before I pull up my share screen, I just want to do a couple of introductions. So one of the benefits of doing Zoom meetings is that our general plan consultants did not have to travel in the snow tonight. So there's some benefit there, right? So our first project manager that we have is Chelsea Payne. So Chelsea, if you want to wave. Chelsea is Ascent's Director of Urban Design and Planning. So she's our primary project manager. And then we also have here tonight Kai Lord Farmer, who is Ascent's Air Quality Climate Change Analyst and helped with the climate subcommittee with GPAC, work on the administrative draft of the climate action element and the crossover with the adaptation plan. So just so you see those faces here, they're available to answer any questions that I didn't already answer for you yesterday. So I'm hopeful that that will just complete the package of information that we're providing for you tonight. And with that, I'll go ahead and do my share screen with our presentation. How does that look?
Looks perfect.
Yes, I practiced. Thanks, Jeannie. Great. So we are doing an update for council, and I thought because we have a couple of new council members, I'm going to do a little bit of detail just to provide some context. So the council originally approved the general plan update kickoff in February of 2018. So that's when we really started looking at what all is entailed in doing the update. And as part of that, there were several tasks that were lumped under that umbrella CIP for the general plan update. So we had an update to the downtown specific plan because it's from 1997, and although it's served us well, definitely needed a refresh. Also updating the 2025 general plan and really looking at that as an opportunity to keep everything that's good within the plan, take out things that had been completed or outdated, and then add in community values and goals for things that weren't already listed in the plan. So a lot more emphasis on climate change, adaptation, sustainability, things like that, where in 2025, with the creation of that plan, we hadn't kind of gotten to those community values yet. And then also creating a climate action strategy. And so I know that there's been some discussion of, is it a climate action plan? What is it that we're actually talking about? And what originally was approved was a strategy, which then translated into creating a climate action element within the umbrella of the general plan update. So those are the three kind of combined capital improvement projects that we had that we're following with under the general plan update. So tonight we're doing an overview to kind of remind us what we've done so far, talk about where we're at right now, and then where we're going. So what else is still left in this whole timeline that we have for the general plan update. And then in addition to that, we're asking for council to authorize a contract amendment in a not to exceed amount of a little over $210,000. So I mentioned, as before, that we started in 2018. It's the three different subtasks that we have grouped under that. And then when we approved the contract with Ascent, we had a series of phases that we called out of things we're going to accomplish. So starting with the initiation, moving into the existing conditions report, which is a 406-page background report that was created in 2018 and 2019 for us to use to do the environmental impact report. It created a baseline of just data for us to use as we went through the discussions of different goals, policies, challenges, opportunities. And then we had a public process pretty early on to look at the town's vision statement that we have in the general plan, to talk about the opportunities and issues that the community is facing. We were just starting to get into housing discussions and having several housing workshops, and those helped us adopt the updated housing element. So we have one element completed, which is the housing element. And that doesn't mean that through the remainder of the general plan update process that we can't go in and add or change things. It just means that we've met the state's requirements to have that adopted within our required timeframes, and that we'll just make sure we're looking at it from a consistency perspective. And then if there's anything else that comes up between now and the rest of the general plan process. The council created a general plan advisory committee as part of this update. We did not have a general plan advisory committee when we were working on the 2025 general plan. Public engagement was done through a series of in-person workshops. We had a lot of discussions that went to the Planning Commission and the council, but it wasn't at the same level as having a general plan advisory committee, which is a group of stakeholders who are supposed to represent the diversity of community perspectives and really be able to talk at those at a pretty deep level. So with our general plan advisory committee, we have gone through and looked at the vision statement. We've gone through the guiding principles and the goals, and GPAC has created draft versions of all of those. So those were included in your staff report. And that was done through both group discussion with all of GPAC and then with some subcommittee work also. And then the staff has also worked to create what we're calling administrative drafts of all of the elements, and also the downtown specific plan. So this is a combination of staff effort and consultant effort to really go through and do all the audit work, to identify things that have been completed that can be removed from the general plan, to go through and identify everything that we've talked about that's been missing, both through direct experience of staff working with the general plan on a daily basis, and then also through the public comment that we've heard. These are not finished drafts. We call them staff drafts because they are really at that level for us to still be able to insert more information through the next phase of the process, which is what we're currently working on, which is the land use alternatives phase. So this is the phase that we've been in. We originally expected it to take about 8 months, and we're kind of pushing past 15 months now in this process. And I think a lot of it is COVID, yes, but it's also just a complicated subject. And especially now to try and talk about through a Zoom format, because there's a lot of maps, there's a lot of different colors that are shown. Density is sometimes a hard thing to grasp with pictures that may not resonate depending on if you're not a planner or you just don't understand the differences between the different housing types that are being shown. And so that's definitely added to some of the timelines for our review. But our ultimate goal through this phase of the process that we're in right now is for GPAC to confirm the range of land use alternatives that we want to have considered in the general plan, and to select a preferred alternative that will move to the Planning Commission along with a report for them to be able to weigh in on, and then for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the council. So another component of this beyond GPAC is that we do want to have another workshop. We had held one right when COVID started that we had done, not in a live format because we weren't that savvy at that time, but we did want to do something. We've learned a lot. We've seen some success with the live workshops, and that's definitely the direction that we want to go. And we do also think that if we get greater participation, that we can do that a couple times. We can have them recorded. We can have them in a paper format if we need to. So we've really learned a bunch, and we're hoping to be able to incorporate that into this next workshop that we're going to do. What I thought would be helpful, again, because we have new council members, is to pull out some of the graphics and some of the discussion that's been happening at the GPAC level with their monthly meetings that they have, just so that the land use alternatives process itself seems more tangible. Because like I said, it is something that's not in everyone's day-to-day discussions. And so this is something that I think will just help make this a little more understandable. So one of the first things that we worked with GPAC on was, what is the goal of talking about our land use designations that we have in the general plan? So we have this map that's included in our land use element. The map shows different colors. Within those colors of areas, we designate different housing densities, different intensity of uses. And do we want to change those? And if so, what criteria, what metrics, what are we doing when we consider these changes? So first, starting with the goals. And you can see with the goals listed on the screen here that these are ones that staff started with and we had a lot of dialogue about, but these are things that we had heard through the public engagement process as a starting point for GPAC to discuss. And housing, still a priority. That was a priority when we started. Looking at sustainable land use patterns, so kind of speaking to climate change and the community's interest in being a leader. And then also acknowledging our demand for industrial land. And so one of the other things I didn't identify that we'd already accomplished is that we had done a market study for non-residential uses with BAE Urban Economics to kind of get that assessment of how are we doing, in relation to what we assumed in the 2025 build out. Do we have enough commercial space? Do we not? Or do we have the right types or mix of kind of non-residential uses? So that included office, retail, and industrial. And so one of the findings of that was looking at sort of our industrial, specifically in the dialogue, that if there's a need for additional land or we want to move around where our industrial land use designations are, how do we address where it would go? And one of those kind of points of trade-offs has come in the discussion about the Truckee River, particularly downtown, where we do still have a lot of industrial users. When we did the river revitalization strategy, we talked about moving a lot of these industrial uses off the river, and we haven't been all that successful, although we keep trying to find ways to incentivize property owners and businesses to be in different locations and be able to do some redevelopment along the river that really respects the river itself and provides opportunities for the public to engage. So that gives you kind of a sense of the goals that started this process. And then that moved us into a discussion about the metrics, sort of how will we measure how well the alternatives, misspelled perform on there, against the goals, and really take a look at what's important to the community in doing that. So these were a couple of graphics that we had shown in the GPAC meetings to kind of start the discussion, talking about our housing needs, talking about, how transit and relates to the housing that we create or the land use changes that we're looking at doing and the greenhouse gas emissions lens that we want to add that we didn't have in the 2025 general plan. And then kind of with the graphic on the bottom, showing how the different alternatives can be looked at within those metrics to say like, yes, something will support that or not, and helping GPAC go through and make some decisions about where we want to make changes or not. So this is the land use map out of the 2025 general plan. So this shows all of the different land use designations. And this is different than when we talk about zoning. They work together. So our general plan is our blueprint for the community's future development. It's big picture. We have our goals and our vision. We have policies. And then when we get to implementation, we have actions in the general plan. And that filters down into our zoning ordinance, which we call our development code, where we specify further clarity how to implement the general plan. And so if we look on this map, you can see downtown is shown as kind of a gray blob, as plan area. Well, that's because we have the downtown specific plan. And then you have kind of the area around Donner Lake is blue because that's where the state park is. And you can kind of start to see how these different designations work together. And then if you were able to pull up the zoning map with it side by side, you would see how they correlate. So I think this will help kind of, like I said, in the discussions when we talk about land use designations, we're talking about a map, but we're further talking about the density and intensity of the uses and the businesses that we see happening within these areas. So some of the examples that I'm including on here are actual examples that GPAC's been discussing over the last couple of months. These are not finalized. These are still working concepts. Ascent continues to refine these and also create some additional land use alternatives for GPAC to discuss. But you can kind of see how the colors that are shown on this map versus the previous map, these are starting to change. And some of that's because we're looking at modifying descriptions, collapsing some of the residential densities into sort of categories that better reflect what's been constructed within the community. We're adding new designations in these concepts to sort of dig at some of the ideas that we've heard, change the way we look at our commercial areas, looking at mixed use, and really kind of, like I said, change some of the perspectives and just explaining what we've seen and what we've heard the community ask for. But these are not finished. So this one shows more of an economic focus, where this next one shows more of a housing focus. And like I said, these are lenses that we're using in these discussions. But ultimately, when we have a workshop, these are the types of maps that we're going to show to have a range of ideas, a range of densities and topics for the community to be able to weigh in on. So, do we want to have 3-story buildings in Gateway because we want to have a more dense infill alternative that we consider? Do we want to have higher densities downtown? What are the trade-offs of some of the decisions that we would be making? Are there other areas that we've identified challenges in that maybe have become overpopular, and how do we manage that within the general plan? So lots of concepts, lots of hard work being done by GPAC, lots of differences of opinion, but ultimately making progress moving forward with ultimately our goal to be able to have something kind of like this shown in some of the work that we're doing, where we're able to summarize, the differences between them, and then that will help facilitate the community, the council, planning commission, and GPAC to be able to make decisions about, which one they prefer, which out of these options that we will show. And again, this was based on discussion we had with GPAC, so we're expanding that slightly now to include some different and modified and additional alternatives. But I think this is helpful in just kind of showing how the work happens within GPAC and the level of discussion that they get into in talking about the land use alternatives process. So what's next? We still have a lot to do. I think we're confident that we can do it. We want to finish out the land use alternatives phase so that we can move on to some of the other work that's exciting and interesting, which is the policy work. So talking about all the individual elements, whether we're talking about the open space element, we're talking about the safety element because we want to incorporate wildfire preparedness, or we want to talk about the land use element more specifically, or community character because, if we make some radical changes to address climate change, how do we address community character on top of that? Or how do we address our housing needs, knowing that not everyone wants to see 5-story buildings throughout the town, but we do have a need and we haven't quite figured out how to address that with the current housing stock or types that we have. We also are working on the downtown specific plan. So that's something else that is running on a parallel track, but being done by additional staff at Ascent. And then also our associate planner, Yumi Dawn, is taking the lead on that. And so working with the Historic Preservation Advisory Commission on concepts that are included in there, some of the goals and policies within there, and then also the overlap with the work that's happening with the general plan itself. The environmental impact report is another large component of the work that we're doing. I think we will still be able to use a significant portion of the existing conditions report to supplement that work, even though we understand that things have changed in the community. There are some different patterns and activities that have happened, but a lot of the foundational work within that can be used to save us some time. And then the ultimate goal is to create the final documents and have those adopted by the council. So the target date, which we're showing on the graphic that was included in the staff report right now, would be June 2022. And this does assume that we can finish out our review of the land use alternatives phase with GPAC pretty quickly, and that we can roll right into doing the review of the elements themselves starting in June. So it's still a pretty aggressive timeframe, but I think if we want to get through this, this is the commitment that we're making so that we can have a finished general plan for us to be able to use, knowing that we have a lot of development pressure and maybe there are some things in our current general plan that aren't meeting the needs of what those project demands are. Which takes us to the contract amendment request that we're asking for today. And a lot of this, as I talk about in the staff report, has been driven by, COVID in part. It's because we've spent a lot of time with the General Plan Advisory Committee and Ascent has stepped in to help, but we've seen some benefit in them stepping in more and taking more of a lead role in helping staff. That although we do our best, staff stretch, thinner by the day. And so having Ascent available for us to help with GPAC, to have some additional eyes on kind of project management, be able to have more specific meetings when we have areas of controversy, whether it's with a property owner or any kind of community group. It's really what we consider to be an extension of the staff in order to get this done. So that's the bulk of what the request is tonight. And some of it's coordination, some of it's kind of continued website maintenance because we're extending beyond the time frame that we thought we would. But some of it too is trying to retool what we're doing in a virtual format. So bringing in new options. What we included in there was something called Conveo, where it's like a PDF option where you can kind of have Post-its. And so GPAC would be able to go in and see everyone else's comments and be able to comment on those, which isn't something that the staff has done previously. But again, because we've changed some of our format, that's a new tool that we would be able to use that we don't have access to right now. And I know it does seem kind of awkward that we haven't even expended all the funds that the council has designated for this through the CAP, and we're asking for additional money. But the reason behind that is because we have used up the contingency funds, and those are listed in the staff report. And we don't want to use the money we previously designated with the original contract, because we still need that money there to do the EIR, to prepare the final documents and do that work. So this is new work added on to the original scope. So I left this presentation at a very big picture because I do want council to have the opportunity to ask questions of Ascent if they have questions. So really big picture overview, and looking for council to authorize the town manager to execute the contract amendment number 7 with Ascent for an amount not to exceed a little over $210,000. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Chelsea or Kai, did you want to add anything to that?
I hadn't, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I hadn't prepared any remarks. Danielle, Jenna, and I coordinate very closely, and so they are, they understand all of the components of what we're asking for in this budget amendment. But I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the details of our process or the scope of work that's included in this amendment.
We will hit that round robin. Kai, any comments from you?
No, I think just echoing what Chelsea said, nice to see you all, Mayor and council members, some familiar faces there from the GPAC process. And yeah, just happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for being here. And you're right, or Danielle's right. It's a good thing you're not up here trying to drive through this. So, council members Zabriskie, what questions do you have?
A few more than several. Let me start by saying I'm very happy to see both Chelsea and Kai here. It's been a little over a year since I've seen you, Kai. It's great to have you back again. I'm going to pretty much just track the contract. So that means going through current status and then looking at the amendments as well as the future work, the cost of that. Has staff already seen the administrative draft alternatives report?
No, that's in process.
And one of the amendments is to present it to the GPAC for review after staff's reviewed it. Is that correct? Okay. I notice in the contract that in talking about the alternatives report, and this is on the land use, I'm sure, that it talks about the draft, the focus of the alternatives being to enhance focus areas, to increase connectivity between activity nodes, ensuring that the land use concepts reflect a variety of housing options, and that the land use designations include standards of population density and building intensity, as well as guidelines for urban form and character. And then it goes on in terms of providing for more informed choice, that the potential evaluation criteria include opportunities for new housing and jobs, land use compatibility, fiscal health, mobility, connectivity, and impacts on the natural environment. I'm repeating all this to belabor a point I've made before, that it's very important that GPAC and the community see those in connection with the community workshop, because they're not necessarily going to understand. We aren't necessarily going to understand the effect of the alternative land use designations without knowing what the professionals, what our experts have to say about what their effect would be on other things. So, which then leads, if staff hasn't yet seen the alternatives report, and the amendment provides for GPAC reviewing it after the staff sees it, how can all of that be done in time for the next scheduled community workshop? And that can either Chelsea or Danielle can answer.
I'll start if you want, Chelsea, and you can enhance what I say. But just because we don't have the report done, I mean, we're still working on all the major components of it. So whether they're in a map form or the concepts or the, sort of script we're using, like we've seen all those different components, and we're going to continue to refine them somewhat, based on what GPAC says. So although we don't have the official report, we have a lot of those components that we've already gone through.
And sure, council members of Risky, I'll just add to that. We're still in the phase of developing the land use concepts. So that's what we are trying to get confirmation that these are, we are using the terms concepts and alternatives a little bit interchangeably, but we're trying to get confirmation from the GPAC that these are the land use concepts that you want us to analyze to come back in a land use alternatives report and to present to the community. So until we have the land use concepts confirmed, we can't run our analysis of the traffic analysis to understand the impacts, and then run that through our greenhouse gas emissions models to come back to the community with that information. So we're sort of still in that phase of, are these the range of land use alternatives that you want us to analyze and present back to the community with that additional analysis?
So we don't have a date set yet for the community workshop?
We do not have a date set. We're hoping for a May timeframe, but there's a process of, once we confirm the land use, the range of land use alternatives that we are analyzing, we have to then calculate, finalize all of the capacity numbers, and then provide that to our traffic consultant. And it takes about 6 weeks to run the traffic analysis. So we're hoping to be able to present to the community in May, but we have to get that range of alternatives confirmed so we can get the analysis running.
So just before moving on from this topic, when you're doing the land use designations that you're going to present to staff and the GPAC, are you going to be trying to take in all these potential evaluation criteria in connection with where you draw the boundaries, do the densities, do the intensities?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If you could maybe reiterate that.
Yeah. You're going to be presenting alternative maps, correct? With different boundaries and different intensities for commercial and different densities for residential, correct?
Correct.
Let me ask it this way. What criteria are you going to use then to decide where you put the boundaries and what density and intensity you put in there? And is this covered in the budget?
Well, I think you've seen some of our initial maps, and we aren't looking at really expanding the footprint of urban development beyond what was already envisioned in the current general plan. So it's really a matter of adjusting the densities and intensities of current urban of areas that are currently designated for urban development. So I would say this is more of a surgical update. We're not talking about expansive alternatives that are, expanding the boundaries of the town or looking to. So when you ask about what boundaries, we're basing it on the boundaries of what's currently planned for development in the general plan.
But I would add to that too, that you have staff's perspective being brought in. We have some legal constraints. So there are some areas of conflict where, whether it's the community or GPAC, want to see something that we think is not feasible. So those are things that, we're adding into that process in addition to GPAC's involvement, community engagement, prior discussions, years worth of staff experience in working with the general plan, a sense experience. So there's a lot of different factors that we're using in creating these maps where, it's not just kind of one lens that we're using.
Okay. Still on this same theme, I fully appreciate staff's decades of experience with the local area. And one of the big strengths I see in the consultants and why we're paying, hundreds of dollars an hour for consultants is they're bringing in, at a minimum, a statewide experience, having worked with many other communities in the state. And so they'll have the benefit of what these other communities have done in their general plans. And they refer to looking at opportunities and best practices. And I guess I'm directing this mostly to you, Chelsea. I'm wondering, the GPAC people in a way are like staff. We're just lay people that live in the community, and we just know our own community, but we're not professionals and we don't know what goes on in other communities especially. So when I hear about opportunities and best practices, my question to you is, are you considering the latest recommendations of the major planning organizations in regard to reducing the risk of wildfire damage? How do you establish conservation easements for property currently slated for development? I mean, are these things that you're considering as alternatives to bring to us? Are you considering, do we consider as an alternative redesignating single family zone properties? I mean, the existing report that Ascent did said 90% of our residential areas zoned for single family. Are you considering a change in that as an alternative for the community to consider? Redesignating mobile home parks to be exclusively zoned for mobile home parks. Are those things from your statewide experience that you think we should at least be aware of in deciding what alternatives to choose? And are they in the budget?
We're considering all of these things, and we do have experts on our team in urban design and wildfire planning and greenhouse gas emissions. There are also some legal constraints, as Danielle mentioned, around some of the land use changes. We haven't really discussed the topic of redesignating single family areas. That's something we're certainly exploring with other communities. I'm working right now in the city of Sacramento on their housing element update, and through that effort, they're talking about looking at opening up single family zones for up to 4plexes. I haven't heard that as a desire expressed on the town of Truckee through the outreach we've done. So we bring our best practices from other communities, but we base it on the community engagement and what we hear as the desires of the local community. So not all of those the strategies we use in one community are transferable to another, but we're certainly open to discussing any of those approaches. And I think there's a lot more discussion that needs to happen on the land use alternatives. We're trying to put a range of choices out there to then facilitate that discussion. It's not always about a land use change. Sometimes it's about a policy change that's coupled with that land use. So we want to be able to look at the range of land use alternatives, identify what policy considerations we need to also fold into the general plan to pair with whatever land use alternatives are selected.
Is it safe for me to assume that the town is paying us cent in part to bring to the community ideas that we may not have ourselves, like having fourplexes in single family zoned areas? Or is it up to the community to look around at what's going on elsewhere in the state to see what novel ideas are being recommended by the professionals?
We can bring forward any of those discussions, any of those opportunities. I think the biggest challenge we've had with this project is we've been in a very technical role up until this point, where we're working behind the scenes staff has been interfacing with the GPAC and the community, and we've been in a support role. And I think this approach allows us to have more of these direct conversations and to have more rich conversations that inform this process. So we've just, as you know, we just for the first time made an appearance at the GPAC at the January meeting, and that has really already helped the process make sure we're reflecting the range of ideas, the range of opinions represented on the advisory committee.
I'm going to jump ahead to a little more easier, more specific questions. But let me say my sense from the community is it's very concerned about wildfires. It's very concerned about providing housing for our workers, for our low-income people and our middle-income families. And we're very open to how we can accomplish that through land use redesignations or other means. But we don't have the professional expertise that you do for the potential alternatives, the options that might be available to us. So I hope the budget is covering that kind of expert advice. Do we have a date now for when we expect to see the general plan audit report?
So I think you're referring to something that's in the original scope, which staff took that on and did the auditing. So we didn't produce a report out of it, but it's already incorporated into the elements.
I have it down as task 5.1. And I thought we were in phase 4 right now. It's called the General Plan Audit Report.
Yeah, so we took the opportunity to do that when we were kind of stuck in limbo during COVID. So we shifted the schedule so that we were able to have something productive to work on, just taking advantage of that time. So that's something that staff did because we weren't having planning commission meetings. We weren't having historic preservation advisory committee meetings. We weren't having GPAC meetings.
And has that been shared with GPAC?
No, what we're doing is we're just combining it with the elements. So we'll show the elements as red line copies.
Would staff be willing to share the audit report with GPAC?
It's not a report. It's like I said, we changed some of we went through all of the elements and did the work to decide, what's been completed and can be removed, what should be incorporated, what can be, finished. So we'll have that available for GPAC. I think we had that shown as starting the elements in June.
So yes, you'll see the product of that work. It's just not in a consolidated report. It'll be within each specific element, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Is the work session under task 5.2, does that include the community or GPAC, or is that just with the consultant team and town staff?
I can speak to that, council member. So that the team work session was meant to be a town staff consultant coordination, and we already did an initial work session before town staff started the update to the elements. We did a virtual session on best practices in writing policies and programs, and so that was an internal working session. This process is set up a little bit differently than if the consultant team was leading the update. We're here in more of a support role to town staff who is leading the general plan update. So we're here as a resource to town staff. And then the contract amendment tonight would be to allow us to be more involved in the GPAC process, to be a resource to the GPAC as well.
Okay. So under the amendment, or maybe under the existing contract, the consultant would be able to provide example policies and best practices to GPAC?
That's correct.
I'd sent in a question and answer about having the contract reflect that the consultant would take the lead. There's a line in the staff report about the consultant taking on more of a lead, and the answer that came back is, well, we could revise the contract, the amendment to reflect that, because the existing contract and amendment have words like consultant will assist, provide, that sort of thing. Danielle, I'm looking at it more now, and I do have language I'd be happy to share in a moment, depending on what the rest of the council members think, that essentially my concern is not so much leading from the consultant as providing expert advice. There's places where it says they will help facilitate a meeting. I'm thinking in terms of we actually get the benefit of their professional advice. Anyway, there's two spots in the amendments where I would add those. I want to go now. I had a lot of problems with understanding the climate plan, climate element, and I'm glad that Kai is here to help us with this. I thought we all, call it what you will, plan or element. I thought we already had a plan or element sitting on a shelf somewhere. I guess that's wrong. Is that wrong?
Yeah, we've never prepared one. So the first effort that we did was with the adaptation plan. But prior to that, the town's never had a climate action plan.
Okay. And then the consultant is saying to be another $200,000 to do a standalone climate plan. Do I have that correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, the difference seems to be between doing an independent EIR, a separate EIR for a climate plan versus an integrated EIR where the climate element is simply part of the general plan's EIR. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I can just add on to that. Because it would be a separate EIR, it's an entirely separate environmental review process. And then, a small portion of that would also be taking the climate action plan that is an element now, and turning it into a separate standalone document, which would also take a bit of work as well.
Regardless of whether we call it a plan, a standalone plan, or an element, though, aren't we in both cases trying to integrate and make sure the plan or element is compatible with the rest of the general plan? Aren't we identifying the conflicts and the compatibility regardless?
Well, I guess the one difference would be that if the climate action plan process moved ahead of the general planning process, that there may be inconsistencies in the policies in the climate action plan that may not be reflected in the general plan because it's coming at a later point.
Now, the climate element would be an actual element, right? It wouldn't be an appendix?
Yes. What we've been working on with staff right now is essentially it's a climate action plan, and it does all of the things that a climate action plan does need to do, but it's incorporated in the general plan, which provides some benefits. So there'll be a climate action element of the general plan policy document, and then an appendix which provides a bit more detail for implementation purposes for town staff.
Okay. Now, Kai, you and I participated in the climate subcommittee, and we came up with a long list of potential strategies. If we keep the climate plan as an element within the general plan and avoid spending $200,000 more dollars, there's nothing that prevents us from proceeding independently with some of the climate strategies. Correct? The town on its own. I'm not talking about your assent, but the town on its own could go ahead and start implementing strategies.
That's right. Yeah. I think in general, a general plan serves as a policy guidance document. But if there are one or two items or strategies that are going to be in the climate action element that the town wants to take a lead on and get a head start on, I don't necessarily see any conflict there. Chelsea or Danielle may want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, this was council's approach with the renewable energy goals, that because we didn't have anything in a general plan policy, council took action to do that separately. It just becomes a different tool for council to use. So I think that's something that the council could discuss as part of the priority setting also, depending on the outcome of the discussion tonight.
And Kai, or Chelsea, whoever, does the budget amendment, not the $200,000, but the one where we keep a climate action as an element of the general plan, will that element, I guess in combination with the general plan, meet the requirements that allows us to do the tiering and streamlining of individual projects under CEQA review?
Yep. Yeah, that was part of the original scope, was to create a climate action element within the general plan, but then have it serve as a CEQA qualified GHG reduction plan, so that it can be used. The strategies in the element can be used for tiering and streamlining for future development projects. So
the criteria should be sufficiently objective and quantitative to pass judicial muster.
Yep. Yeah. And part of this appendix document that would go along with the actual element provides a bit more detail and everything that needs to be there in terms of CEQA qualifications.
Are you able to say that the South Lake Tahoe Climate Action Plan would pass judicial muster, that it's sufficiently objective? Are you willing to express an opinion on that?
I think I would have to refrain, only because I'm not as familiar with it at this point, but they didn't necessarily go through the same CEQA qualification process as the town of Truckee is doing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everybody's patience. Those are all my questions for now.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Councilmember and Vice Mayor Henderson, What questions do you have?
I just have a couple. Councilmember Zabriskie was so thorough. I really appreciate that. On one of the comments that he talked about in the beginning was just the timeline. So for the land use alternatives, we're 15 months in. I know we wanted it to be shorter than that. Are we on target currently for it going to Planning Commission in May, which I think is what we were in that timeline that you showed, Danielle?
So some of this depends on how fast we can get GPAC to be able to discuss the range of preferred alternatives. So I mentioned that, it's slightly slipping because, we took some time this month to do one-on-one meetings, and some of those discussions are presenting very different ideas than we've gotten out of the group discussions. And so we're working with Chelsea and her team to try and figure out how to mesh some of these new concepts and ideas and things and talk about those and still provide the range. So we really, really want to try and stay on that targeted goal.
Can you give an example of just what are those completely conflicting ideas that are coming out, or just can you give us an example just to provide a little context?
There's we'll call them trade-offs. There's the implementation of the river strategy versus preservation of and creation of additional industrial land. So there's one. Sort of the densities of housing and where those are appropriately located versus traffic implications. There's community character. For example, putting housing on the Ponderosa Golf Course versus creating new housing opportunities and additional density in the community. Discussions about creation of open space in areas previously considered for housing, such as the site formerly called Canyon Springs. So there's quite a few of these points of trade-off that we're working through to figure out how to show in these range of alternatives. And to Councilmember Zabriskie's point about, why aren't we showing single family that has, 4 units? Well, the state is in the process of trying to do that on our behalf through SB 9. And so these are things that we're monitoring and that we do expect to bring up as part of the discussion with the community of there's other factors out there that the state is doing that are different than have come up, necessarily through community discussion that we need to think about. So those are just some examples.
That's really helpful. And does that also relate to the comment that you made about there have been some specific areas in town where challenges have been identified? Okay. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Romack.
I'm good. My questions have all been asked already and answered, so thank you.
Excellent. And Councilmember Pallavi.
Yeah, I do actually have one question. Jan didn't get them all this time, but you did a good job, Jan. And it's a little bit of following up on some of Jan's comments and clearly his themes that came through in some of the question and answer before the council meeting. And Jan is really asking, and I think it's a really important concept, because if we want Ascent to bring in these outside ideas that aren't currently being considered, right? I mean, I know for one, I've talked about multiple units on single family residences for the past couple of years with Danielle, just on the side, right? And so, what you bring up, Jan, is sort of a somewhat fundamentally different way of interacting with Ascent, I think, than what the GPAC has been going through. So let's say Ascent does bring some of this to the table. And I guess my question is both to my fellow council member, Zabriskie, and then maybe also to Chelsea, and then maybe to staff is, within the GPAC crew, which is really council members Zabriskie and Mayor Klofstad, how much are you looking for? And is it a lot? Is it a little? Do you feel like you've been getting it or haven't been getting it? And then depending on your answers to that, really going back to both Chelsea and Danielle, is to say, okay, well, if all of a sudden we want to have a GPAC meeting that brings in examples from across the state, and that then wants to intersect with the land use alternatives process, I mean, we're talking an extra 2 to 3 months potentially. So I guess when we move to deliberation, the question really is, how much do we want? And I would argue it can't hurt, at least a little bit. But we have to be very conscious of this timeline. And I think both Mayor Klostad and I, having now this started before we even got on council and now looking at an end date potentially beyond our terms, depending on how much more delays we see, I think there's some pretty big questions in there as to really how much you want to receive and how much we have the capacity to receive. So maybe if I can ask Councilmember Zabriskie that question first, and then maybe turn it over to Chelsea second. I was at Jan. What do you envision? What do you want? How much more do you want?
Oh, I want to achieve the goals that are laid out. The 5 or 6 goals you see at the beginning of the, I think they were developed through the vision statement. I was just looking for them right now. But essentially, it is housing, it's wildfire protection, community character.
I guess what I'm asking
reduction in traffic. That's what I'm looking for.
And to what extent do you feel like either the land use alternatives or the information that you're being presented at GPAC is not giving you that data, that information that you seem to sort of be honing in on from a sense perspective?
The alternatives that were presented essentially gave alternative densities, alternative intensities in a fairly narrow range. There really was nothing that showed how the land use maps would reduce greenhouse gases, increase low income or middle income housing. Didn't really show how there's less traffic, less greenhouse gases. There wasn't anything really about interconnectivity, protection of the natural environment.
Yeah, and maybe
they were very narrow.
Right, and maybe you're not hearing what I'm asking, because I guess the land use alternatives, once we decide on that will then impact, if we have higher densities, how does that impact reduction of greenhouse gas emissions? So maybe I'll redirect my question a little bit to maybe Chelsea, and then maybe hear from staff a little bit of, oh, hi, that's what my kid does all the time too, sorry. We all have kids, it's all good. Just really quickly from Ascent, how much more external information, at this point in the process can be brought in, and maybe Kai or Chelsea, if you're back, you want to answer that. Sorry. I have the same issues all the time.
My daughter has impeccable timing.
Of course. Would you like me to repeat that, or are you good?
Well, I'll try to answer, and then if I miss part of your question, if you want to reiterate that. But one moment, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I can just...
Maybe Danielle or Danielle, why don't you fill the time, and we'll get Chelsea back in a second. Because I guess what I'm hearing from Councilmember Zabriskie is, we want more of a sense professional input, right, with examples from around the state. And I guess what I don't understand is, how much would that either both affect the timeline, and really how much do you think the GPAC, how much more is there to bring to the GPAC?
Yeah, I think some of the conversations have been difficult because the land uses aren't the policies. And so when you talk about something like we want more low and middle income housing, we can't do that through a land use designation alone. It has to come through a combination of the designations and the policy work that goes with it, which goes all the way down into amending the development code if necessary. So what we can do is identify housing types, densities, things that we know will accommodate low and middle income housing, whether they're for rent or for purchase or, some things along that line. But that, I think, is where GPAC has struggled. Is we started with focus areas and saying, okay, what are the opportunity sites? What are the challenges? Okay, we've identified those. And then we moved to, well, now we need the whole town-wide perspective, because if we're talking about trade-offs, if we're going to give something up, what are we going to get in return? What does that look like? And so we took that perspective. And then now we're back to a combination of the two of, kind of this range of alternatives that we want to look at. And we won't be able to get to that policy interest until we finish out the mapping with the alternatives themselves. So I'm not sure that there's a lot of additional information that we are going to be able to provide, other than some additional alternatives that we hope will kind of address the majority of GPAC's interests, which includes a river strategy alternative. So what happens if you were to implement the river revitalization strategy? Something that we think will better reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but there's trade-offs again, because if we add, for example, 5-story buildings, and I keep saying that because it sounds ridiculous, except that's what this could look like in an example, that you're going to change the traffic patterns and all those things. But until we know what that range is, we can't even get to that level of analysis that Chelsea just talked about, of doing the traffic work and the environmental work behind it. I mean, they work together. So we start at this point and then move to the next steps.
Thank you. Chelsea, was there anything you wanted to add? Sorry about that.
Sure, and I apologize that I had to miss half of that response. But yeah, I think Danielle explained that we need to get to the stage of analysis to be able to provide provide that comparison and talk about the impacts and the metrics. But we also heard from the GPAC that we need to do a better job of communicating the why. Why are we proposing mixed use? Why are we proposing a broader range of housing densities? How do these types? So we are spending time right now with honing that message and focusing on how we're going to be communicating this back to the community at the workshop, hopefully in May. So we heard that message loud and clear, and we're trying to hold that into the discussion. While we might not have the metrics at this point, we can at least frame how the densities we propose relate to meeting the housing needs for Truckee residents.
And the development patterns would go along with that, obviously, yeah. And I understand all of that. I guess, what I was sort of keying in on was, are there themes that the GPAC feels are missing, right? Are there other broader things that aren't being brought into the discussion? And I think what I'm hearing is not necessarily there just needs to be a little bit more of a story behind some of the land use alternatives so that the GPAC can better understand how those land use alternatives will affect those things that keep being brought up. And then my last question is simply on a little bit of process, and maybe this is for staff or Ascent. I'm not exactly sure. You guys can choose. But coming back with one land use alternative, I think is obviously going to be a pretty large feat. And I applaud you if the GPAC actually picks a single land use alternative that they're able to bring back to us. So I guess I'm wondering, how a menu or sort of range, we like this part of this alternative, that part of that alternative. That's all moving pieces that can all work together, or is it sort of like really black and white and there has to be no land use alternative one, that got 10 votes, GPAC's made up of, 18 people, great, that one wins. Can you maybe just explain a little bit more of how GPAC's recommendation will be taken to the Planning Commission and or GPAC and the community's recommendation will then be taken to the Planning Commission?
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at answering that question. So the process of selecting a preferred land use alternative. First, I'll say we're looking at the land uses from, yes, the townwide perspective and organizing the land use changes by theme, but we're also looking at the land use changes at the focus area level. And so, for example, Donner Lake or Donner Pass Road Gateway area. So the ultimate recommendation of a preferred alternative, I expect it will likely be a hybrid it probably wouldn't be one of the townwide alternatives, but a hybrid approach where we say, well, in this focus area, we like this approach. In this focus area, we like this land use alternative. And it could even be, we like this land use alternative, but with a change on this particular site to this designation. So we expect there's this process of creating a hybrid alternative. And we often don't have a consensus coming out of a general plan advisory committee, and I see a lot of different interests represented on the GPAC. So I think having a consensus is probably not likely, but we can do our best to summarize the feedback that we hear and describe sort of majority opinions or how the conversation went. And we'll do our very best to get to a consensus alternative, but short of that, we will document, summarize all of the feedback from the GPAC as well as the community. So we'll do a community workshop summary as well.
Great.
And I'll just say I've been through processes where we have a different recommendation coming from the community, a different recommendation from the advisory committee, and a different recommendation from the planning commission. So it's not unusual to have multiple versions of a preferred alternative. But ultimately, it rolls up to the town council to make that decision.
I hope we can have a little more congruency than that. I look forward to that decision-making process and really hope that you don't bring us 3 distinct alternatives at that. But I'll leave my questions at that. I have some comments to make when we get into deliberation, but thanks, Mayor Klostad. I'm all done.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Pallavi. And I would just comment on that I actually think we do have, anyway, before we got to land use, a lot of consensus. Maybe not unanimous, but consensus. And so this one is definitely challenging us. But that's good. I think it's forcing us all to think. I just have a couple quick questions, mainly about the Bay Urban Economics prepared market analysis. Things have changed pretty drastically since that was completed for our community. And while I'm a little concerned about turning that upside down and accommodating our new community makeup, I still don't want it to be completely ignored. We don't really know if this is, we know we've added quite a few residents. We don't know how long or how permanent they're going to be. And so that makes this really challenging, but I'm just wondering what the plans are to try to consider some of those impacts that we've already seen in our community.
So I can do my best to answer that question. So the BAE market analysis, it was a non-residential market analysis. So it didn't focus on the residential market, but the non-residential market, the industrial, retail, office space demands. We don't have anything in our scope of work to prepare any new projections of population or housing or non-residential development, but we have included in this request a small amount for BAE to allow us to coordinate with them and also tap into their expert advice on this topic. They're also working on a couple of other projects in the town, including the Innovate Gateway project and the SB2 site analysis project. So I understand they're collecting some data and information through those projects that we're hoping to fold back into our land use alternative. So we've had we work with BAE on other projects. We just wanted to allow for some coordination between us and BAE, but we haven't included any scope of work to do any new technical analysis.
Yeah, I guess maybe you didn't see my questions ahead of time, but my specific example was we have a bunch of new residents and we have a lot fewer people utilizing office space. I personally am working out of my home, and I have for the last year. And I'm probably going to continue to do that, as are many other people. So does that change what our needs are in the non-residential sector? And it's not something that you have to answer tonight. It's more of a rhetorical question to this whole group. Is that something that we need to consider or concern ourselves with? Because right now we're not planning on looking at that again. So let's just make sure everybody understands that. So one concern I had when we separated the downtown specific plan for HPAC to look at it is that, I don't sit on HPAC, but I do sit on GPAC. And is there going to be at some point either Ascent or staff taking a look at both the specific plan and what we've done in GPAC and make sure that they're coordinated, that we're not working against each other in our goals and decisions on those two specific goals?
Yes, I mean, we're already doing that now. So even in the administrative draft that we have, we've taken all the feedback that we've gotten so far as part of the just bigger general plan update process, in addition to the virtual workshop we did specific for the downtown specific plan, and combine those. And now we have that draft, but we're also getting, this additional feedback through GPAC. So we'll continue to do that through the process, and actually be able to use that in explaining, like, here's, areas where the community has, focused on and want to talk about further, or so they work together. That's why I say they're in parallel. So we'll go back and forth between them.
Yeah, thank you. That's just so critically important, since I know we're talking about trying to focus our high density housing along our transit routes, and that is straight through our downtown specific plan. So,
and I will add that we brought in Yumi to be our manager of that topic specifically. So she's taking on Nick's climate action work, and she's working on the downtown specific plan. So she's joining our meetings with Ascent, and using that lens to make sure that we're doing the cross review of everything.
Excellent. That's what I needed to hear, that was being addressed. Okay, and then in terms of, I guess I still really wish we could get the climate action plan going and out and working for us, supporting our community's goals that have been so fortified, even just this evening. And it's hard to imagine that we would need to do a separate EIR for a climate action plan that ultimately is there to protect the environment, but it still is a CEQA requirement. And the point here, I guess, is we can't, it's the domino effect, right? If we want to ultimately end up with a self-mitigating environmental impact report, we need to be planning for things like what the traffic impacts are of that land use decision and the greenhouse gas impacts of that zone determination, in order to make sure that we have a self-mitigating EIR in the end, right? Okay, that's our sticking point. I just want that sooner. Okay, are we ready for public comment? Do we have some for this evening?
Yes, we have one text comment.
Great, thank you.
Can we put in an ice rink? And it's anonymous, no name attached.
We would love to put an ice rink in. But that is not what the purpose of this is. So, but thank you, whoever brought that up. Okay. With that, are there any other council clarifying questions? Yes, Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes, an easy one. Is Ascent only working on mobility and climate action after the land use, or is it going to cover all the elements under the contract?
We'll be looking at the entire general plan. So working with staff in a peer review role, review for compliance, best practices, and then taking all of those elements to the GPAC in a series of meetings.
Danielle, you heard Council Member Paula V's concerns about how long this could take to get a general plan. Do you recall at GPAC, was there a discussion about whether we should push ahead or take more time on working, I think it was on the land use alternative, or getting more community input? Do you remember anything along those lines?
I believe the council discussed that specifically in July because there was some community concern and GPAC concern about doing a general plan update process during a pandemic. And council's direction to staff at that time was, we want you to take some additional time, but we want the general plan update to continue forward. So we did take some additional time. We've had conversations with property owners, particularly ones who have either properties that are known controversy, or we think, there's some indication that more of GPAC would want to see that change. We've worked more, one-on-one with GPAC members, and we've brought Ascent in to have conversations with the Contractors Association. And so we've taken that time that you directed us to take, but we really want to get the next workshop out for the public because that's really going to be the next opportunity for the public to engage.
And how could we speed up the process? How to get to a general plan?
Well, there's the unpopular choice of not having a GPAC, which I don't think that's what council has told us. But that would probably be the first thing that would come to mind. We do need to the staff needs to still spend time working through, all the feedback from the alternatives and everything. So, the staff can't push any harder at this point. So we will become the impediment at some point here.
And if we tried to put any of the elements on parallel tracks, that would overload the staff and cost more consulting?
Yeah, both staff and consulting time, because I think I mentioned this in the response to some of the comments that what we don't want to do is release drafts that we're then having to go back in and make multiple edits to, and then having to cross-reference all the elements again, because we made so many different changes. So we're really trying to be conscientious of that what we release to the public is, the best version that we're going to have for them to be able to weigh in on, so that we're minimizing the amount of changes that we have to do.
Then I think I found the goals for the land use alternatives process. It was part of the January presentation. It said protect and enhance the town's character, promote sustainable land use patterns, preserve natural resources and open space, provide an increase of housing, provide enough land for jobs year-round, meet the demand for industrial land, and then make the Truckee River a focal point. Does that sound like what the goals were for the land use alternative?
Yeah, and I included that slide in this presentation so that the rest of the council could see that too, because that was something that we've been using. And when we go back to GPAC this next time, what we're going to more clearly articulate is how the alternatives reflect these goals, because they are common goals that the GPAC supported. So we want to be able to kind of convey that better, and how the range of alternatives really show those goals.
And then it is correct that the consultant is coming back with entirely new land use alternative designations. Is that correct?
So as of right now, we have 2 additional ones that we're working through. And you wouldn't normally have 6 that you would show in a process like this, because it's a lot to try and break down. 4 is pushing it, 3 is preferred. So we're going to see if we can combine some of them and try and reduce that a little bit while still addressing what we heard. But yeah, we have new ones. So the one I mentioned was like a river strategy option. That's just one of them.
And then Chelsea, remember I was asking about bringing to the foreground, to the fore, your statewide experience in terms of other strategies, other methods of land use alternatives for achieving these goals. What does that mean in terms of time period, to get the best practices reflected in one of the alternatives?
We're applying our best practices in developing these alternatives. I think where we need to improve is communicating that back. And some of it is the crunch of time of trying to keep this process going forward. And we're just being brought in to communicate the GPAC right now. So some of this maybe we would have been doing this a year ago, or at least 6 months ago, of having these broader conversations. We were trying to support staff in doing that, but staff is stretched in a lot of different directions, and it's a big lift we have weekly meetings with staff, and then staff is presenting the GPAC and bringing it back to us. So it's just to say we're reflecting that in our proposed changes around moving towards true mixed use and promoting more pedestrian friendly development over auto-centric development. These are all tied to practices of sustainability and reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Oh no.
Oh no. Well, at least it's not me. Or is she just thinking?
That's really unusual because we meet with Chelsea all the time and she never gets frozen. So I think it's in the air tonight.
Kai or Danielle, do you think you could finish her sentence there? Or?
I can try. I pinged her just to let her know that she froze. But I think what she was saying was that promoting pedestrian-friendly, non-auto planning land uses is at the forefront of what's happening throughout the state in terms of planning practices and recommendations across the state and at the state level. So bringing that expertise as much as we can, while also respecting the character of Truckee.
So a lot more background and context for where these land use alternatives came from and how they support some of these larger kind of known statewide practices is something that we want to incorporate into this next presentation to GPAC.
Okay. Danielle, can I go ahead and tell you what the two little word changes I want to run by you before we get into deliberation so you'll know what I was talking about? They're on tasks 11.2 and 11.4. Can you go to 11.2 first? And it's the next to last line.
Okay.
You see where it says will support town staff in preparing meeting materials and will attend. After will attend, what I'd like to get your feedback on is the phrase provide its expert advice, comma, and then continue. And then it's the same idea down in 11.4, the third sentence, or not the third sentence, the third line of 11.4 starts out material preparation. And what I would do is take out the and, move that to conjunction after attendance. So after attendance, it would say and expert advice. That's okay. So that's
good. We're good with that.
Okay, and Kai, while Chelsea is still off, that's okay with you, right?
Sounds good to me. And Chelsea, just let me know she's having some computer trouble, but she's calling in right now.
Okay.
I am here on my phone. I apologize. Apparently it's a night for not only family interruptions, but technical issues as well.
It's all right. We're all living through them.
Chelsea, I should probably run this by you too while you were offline. There were two changes I wanted to make, one in 11.2 and the other in 11.4. And do you have those in front of you?
I do not. My computer has given me the blue screen of death. I'm trying to restart.
Okay. Also, what I wanted to do, what I just talked about with Danielle, is add the words, essentially that Ascent will provide its expert advice in 11.2 and in 11.4, the same thing, and expert advice. And it's in the context of attending, participating, and providing expert advice. Which, I used to be a lawyer, so I apologize if it sounds a little picky, but I'd like to see it in there.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Can we start deliberation? And that would be you, Councilmember Zabriskie, going in our order.
Okay, generally it should be pretty apparent what my concerns are. I don't think GPAC's getting the full benefit of the expertise of our consultants, and I would like to see that happen. I'm fine approving the general plan, having the climate, approving the amendments. Don't do the climate plan as a separate $200,000 item. That does make me all the more anxious that we get the general plan done, because that means we don't start getting the climate element implemented until we have the general plan approved. And I would like to see those two word changes, and then approve the amendment. And going to Councilmember Pallavi's concerns, I share his concerns, but I'm not hearing that trying to get the best practices, the best strategies, as these experts are aware of, to achieve the goals for the land use alternative process are going to take extra time. And I don't think Dave wants to see that happen. Councilmember Pallavi wants to see us sacrifice a 15-year plan on the chance that it is going to take extra time to get it approved.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Vice Mayor Henderson?
Thank you. This has been a really great, really detailed and nuanced conversation, and I really appreciate it. I think ultimately, I do want to see us be able to move forward in the general planning process. I would like to see, if we approve the contract amendment tonight, that we're holding to that, and that we're sort of sticking to, our on-time budget, on-time project completion timelines for this. At the same time, making sure that we really do have that robust community engagement. And I know there's some plans for making some pivots around that to sort of strengthen that. So I recognize that there are challenges in that and sort of inherent in that. And I really want to see us be able to move forward. That's it. I'm going to keep it brief.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson. Councilmember Romack.
Thanks. Yeah, I am excited to see this continue to move forward. This is a very important plan, guiding document, but I'm also kind of thinking of that quote, let's not let the perfect get in the way of the good. And we want it to be as good as possible, but I think we don't want to get too, have to look at everything and take 12 more months and whatnot. So I'm supportive of this additional funds to help Ascent. I really liked what Chelsea just said too, is maybe kind of the framing of the conversation on land use alternatives. Maybe if GPAC kind of has more background, some more of that expertise that Councilmember Zabriskie is looking for in the framing of the conversation at these next meetings, that might help move things forward. But yeah, I would like to see us continue on this process, but I don't want to keep throwing money at it. And, if I don't want to keep seeing delays and now we have to look at this, let's continue to move the process forward so we can come out with an excellent product to look at in the end. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilmember Romack. Councilmember Pallavi?
I think I would also add to Councilmember Romack's wonderful analogy or whatever type of word phrase that was, that perfection is also in the eye of the beholder. And as we know, in any community process, achieving perfection, let alone achieving full buy-in, is not likely to happen, no matter how much time, money, and effort we put into something like this. So I agree with the direction that we're headed. I think this has been a long time coming. I think it's a great acknowledgement by everybody involved to move in this direction. And I'd like to quickly comment on a couple of things that I heard, and I think that they can be accomplished simultaneously. And I really value what Councilmember Zabriskie is bringing up, because I do think it's an incredibly important trade. Is, we're now moving our consultants into a little bit more of a, hey, bring us the best practices, like show us what is out there. What I have a little bit of concern and heartache with is that gets bogged down by GPAC, and specifically in the GPAC process. So, one thing I'd like to make sure at a very broad level is that Ascent feels welcome and actually encouraged to bring a lot of that, but that it doesn't get sort of hounded on by GPAC. I think that there's going to be opportunities both in GPAC, both in the community workshops, both at the Planning Commission, and finally, when it comes back to us, to continue to hear that type of information. And I am concerned that, we're going to get too far bogged down by keeping it too much in GPAC's hands. For the benefit of a lot of people, the expectations of GPAC have shifted at least 5 or 6 times, and just in my term as council, as a planning commissioner, they probably shifted another couple times. And I think we also have to set an expectation for GPAC. So really, the one piece of advice I have for both Ascent and staff is to be very, very, very concise and clear at the next GPAC meeting with how their role is going to be moved forward upon, because I think there's been so many different expectations that have been enabled through this process that it's important for us to make sure that not only the community understands what that means, but also members of GPAC understand that, and that it is going to start to sunset, especially here in the near future, and come back as we need it to, or as directed potentially by council. A couple other quick comments I wanted to bring in. One is I simply wanted to use this opportunity to register my interest and desire for allowing multiple units on single family residential parcels. So I'm going to use this opportunity to do that. I've been a proponent of that for a long time and will continue to be a proponent of that where appropriate and sensitive, of course. And to some of Mayor Klofstad's comments, regarding office space and things like that, well, COVID has clearly upended our lives. I think making hasty decisions on land use policy in light of that, when we're still completely in it, as evidenced by this moment in time right now, we have no idea what some of these issues are going to look like over the next few years. Chelsea and I and Lindsay and all of the rest of our parents with young kids, Courtney included, I'm can't wait to get back to my office and my store and my business full time and not doing childcare all day long, and trying to do math homework. So, I'm not sure that it's appropriate to revisit a lot of that at this point, without really seeing what pans out, and so that everybody does know. The general plan is never set in stone. I can't tell you how many general plan amendments and revisions have happened in our 2025 general plan over time, but it's a lot. So just everybody keep an open mind and understand this isn't the Bible that's going to be inscribed for perpetuity. This is a living document that will be referred to for a long time here on out. And I think it's important to take that very high level view of a document like this. But still pay it the attention and the importance that it is due at the ground level. So I am also also in support of the motion in front of us, and I'm ready to proceed.
Thank you, Councilmember Pallavi. All right, just a few comments. I think you guys have really summed it up well. But in my world, I use two phrases a lot. One is time is of the essence, and the other is strive for success, not perfection, which we've all touched on. And those, I think, are going to be really applicable here. The whole purpose of this is because our current general plan, as we have identified, is not really serving the community's expectations and goals. And until we get this new general plan and the climate action element all approved and through the EIR process and approved, those processes and those new documents are not going to be able to serve our community in the way that we want it to. And so that is the critical thing for me. I agree we've gotten a bit bogged down by a couple of different issues, COVID, of course, being one of them, trying to do everything virtually another. But I think we really do need to acknowledge and move on from some issues that we just can't get to perfection on. And we have to accept that and do the best we can. That's what this document is. It's supposed to be the best we can commit to. And so I would like to also make sure that Ascent feels empowered to, and staff, in these community meetings and GPAC meetings and HPAC meetings, is to be clear when there is a barrier to something that they're asking to do, particularly legal barriers. I know we've had a lot of discussion in the land use element about wanting to maintain open space. And this is where our new population discussions pepper the conversation, because there's so many more people here now. Now we have a higher capacity rate. We used to be 50% of our homes were occupied full time. Now it's a lot more. So we have a lot more people up here. So GPAC is saying, well, we need more open space to coincide with that. Well, I don't think anybody's ever going to say we don't need more open space, but how do we get that? And I think we need to hear more from staff and the consultants in those conversations about what is possible and what's not, or how we get there. I just don't see a path forward on some of these specific areas that have previously been designated as housing, and to just completely call them open space. Yet I know that's what a lot of people want to see. So we need to hit that target too, of being clear with our community. And then I would just like to say that I think what we have, I would like to celebrate a little bit tonight of what we have accomplished, which is a lot. And I now, Danielle, I remember you saying that that's what you guys did with that COVID downtime. And it just makes me all the more eager to see the red lines. I mean, I think a lot of GPAC is really ready for something to review and put our mark on and go to the next step. Like we need to check that next box. So as soon as we can get there, the better. And with that, I think if we can all agree to those ground rules, then we really can achieve success, which is going to be a new general plan for our community and a climate action element. So I too will weigh in and say that I'm supportive of multifamily housing on single residential units, and I am also supportive of looking at some of those climate action elements and seeing if there's specific ones that we could move forward before we while we're waiting for the entire climate action element to be approved. So if there's a few of those that we could pick off sooner rather than later, doing them with a couple of our different levers of governance, I would be very supportive of that as well. Any other comments or deliberation, or do I have a motion?
Mayor Klofstad, can I make one comment?
Absolutely.
Just want to be perfectly clear, and staff, Danielle and Jenna, if you are hearing the same thing, I think there's general consensus amongst the council members that we need to hold tight to the proposed timeline as it's been presented tonight, meaning that by April, having some land use elements ready to move forward and present to the community in May. So, I mean, that would be what we would communicate to GPAC and what we'd hold the committee to. I think that's what I'm hearing as general consensus, and I just want to confirm that.
I would absolutely validate that. And if you need that to be part of the motion, we could include that. If you want every council member to weigh in.
I don't think it needs to be part of the motion in case that changes a vote. But I think I saw enough head nods shake yes that was consensus. So
yes, as a consensus, certainly from me. We can't do it in this meeting, but I would love to see how we could make GPAC more efficient, more streamlined in and of itself. That's not my, I wish that were in my skill set, but it's not. And in terms of the motion, I'm ready to make the motion. And I
Please
just want to moving that we approve staff's recommendation approving the amendment, which was 11.1 through 11.4, I think, of the contract. Anyway, everything but that $200,000 for climate, for a separate climate plan, and then also amend 11.1 and 11.4 as we discussed, including the words and provide their expert advice.
Thank you. Councilmember Pallavi, would you like to do a second?
As soon as I can find my mute button, I second. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. And Lynn, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Romack.
Yes.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Yes.
Mayor Klovstad.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, with that, we are on to council reports. So Councilmember Zabriskie, do you have anything to report to us from this last week, 2 weeks?
Oops. COVID meetings, Rotary meetings, little bit of work on trying to get water rights for the Truckee River, and then a little bit on natural gas and housing with the Sierra Community House, discussions about keeping people in their homes. Those are things since the last meeting I've been involved in. A separate thing I wanted to bring up is the town addressing where we are in terms of addressing violators of the COVID health restrictions. I don't know if we should have a public meeting on this, and this is maybe something that the town manager can address. I am specifically concerned about some members of a business class who violate the rules and continue operating while other people who comply with the rules are effectively being financially punished for doing the right thing. In some ways, I feel like the town should address it. I'm not sure exactly what the role of the council would be, except it's to the effect of affirming that we're going to support the people who comply with the law, if not more. Anyway, that's all my report.
I'll just follow up, Councilmember Zabriskie, for the benefit of the council and the community watching, that we continue to follow the same enforcement protocols that we have all along in terms of education, outreach to our business community, and trying to work with those that are not in compliance to bring them into compliance.
And at what point do we switch to enforcement instead of wishing encouraging compliance.
Well, since that's not a council agenda item for tonight, I don't think we can go into much more discussion on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say we cannot have a substantive discussion of this tonight. It's not on the agenda.
I agree. My bad. Sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Vice Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. Attended the weekly COVID calls as well. Had the honor of being one of the guest speakers at Good Morning Truckee this morning, along with council members Romack and Zabriskie, and had a lot of just individual conversations with constituents on a whole host of issues, infrastructure and tourism and things like that. One of the conversations that I had this past week I'm really excited about was with Kath Egan about the library status. And of course, she did talk about it again at Good Morning Truckee today. And I just want to sort of call this one out to reiterate that there's a lot of momentum happening around the development of a new state-of-the-art community library for Truckee. So if folks are interested in learning more, I do encourage you to reach out to the Truckee Friends of the Library.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson. And Councilmember Romack.
Thank you. Yeah, I attended weekly COVID calls. Those are always very informative. The North Tahoe Truckee stakeholder group and Good Morning Truckee this morning with Vice Mayor Henderson and Councilmember Zabriskie. It was really fun to see them in person. So I look forward again to the day when we can all be together on the dais and have a conversation in person. So that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Pallavi.
Thanks, Mayor Klostad. Yep, COVID calls for me too. I virtually attended the school district meeting a couple of weeks ago. Had a great opportunity to meet with a potential new hotel operator down in the rail yard, along with some other awesome community dignitaries who were able to attend that as well. And went to the employee appreciation launch this past Friday, where I got an awesome tour of the new courtyard from Riley. So great job to all the staff. That was a great event. Well done putting it on to everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pallavi. Okay, well, I would just like to say that the three of you made me and the town proud this morning. You guys did a great job. You were all eloquent and well-spoken and had some great information to share with the community. So thank you so much for doing that. And Lindsay, I can't believe that was the first time you sat up here. It's like, we got to get you in here. So I actually managed to attend the Nevada County Senior Executives meeting last Friday, and it was very informative about our vaccine distribution system, which is really ramping up, and then of course our COVID cases, and specifically where those are coming from. I attended I had a meeting with Supervisor Bullock, Executive Director Allison Lehman, and Jen Calloway, and we were looking at ways to continue the collaboration with the county and our common goals, as we had just recently done our presentation to them about our goals and our legislative platforms that align. I also spoke to Pete I'm always going to get your name wrong, Pete. Fanolio of CAT, is that how you say it? Everybody's shaking their head. We're trying to just make sure that we're aligned and talking regularly, and it was great to get a little bit more background information about him and what he's working on. I also spoke to Michelle Prestowitz about the Truckee River Watershed Council's efforts on doing some specific Donner Lake and area preservation. And then the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation is putting on a Welcome Wagon Zoom. I attended one of those just to see what they're doing in order to embrace the new residents in our community, and that was really fun. I got to meet a few of them. Hopefully I'll get to attend one of the chamber ones too. So I really just want to give a shout out to our local Rotary, the Community Foundation, and the Chamber, who are reaching out to these new community members and trying to engage them and help them integrate into our community. that was, it's so great to see. That is the kind of town that I want to live in. And lastly, had a discussion with Director Finn of the Truckee Donner PUD, their general manager, Brian Wright, and Jen also, about the possibilities of electrification of our regional bus fleets. So a lot of really exciting and interesting collaborative efforts going on, I think in alignment with one of our council goals of interconnectivity, and that is very exciting. So we are, do you have any other comments, Jen?
I do not, but drive safely tonight, those of us that are here and out on the road.
Yeah. All right. And so we are adjourned until March 23rd at 5 p.m. Thank you, everybody.